Nothing like the first cup of dumpster juice in the morning.
Aí vem pra jogar, velho. Que porra é essa? Ai, caralho, vai tomar no cu, porra. Que desgraça é essa? Que porra é essa também? Ai, Patorinha. Ai, caralho. Que porra é essa, filha da puta? Caralho. Mano, João, essa porra é um mutante. Vai tomar no cu. Morre, desgraça. Ué, vai tomar no cu.
Religious extremists don't believe in plurality or inclusion, but only in their own superiority and privilege. So in the 1950s, they changed our national motto from the unifying phrase E pluribus unum to an exclusionary proclamation of religious belief, and then forced atheist children to chant that mantra ever since. They don't want a democratic republic of we the people. They want an authoritarian regime of forced conformity, restricting even our most intimate liberties, what we think and even who we are. To achieve that goal, they promote American exceptionalism, which is the lie that the U.S. is blessed and will remain so only as long as we appease the Christian version of God, even when that means attacking unbelievers and queer folk, which our increasingly awful state is already doing. In order to sell the first lie, they need to couch it in another lie, that the U.S. was founded as a Christian nation, which is demonstrably factually false even according to the founders themselves. And the lie that our laws were based on Moses, who experts now say never existed. The First Amendment contradicts the First Commandment because the founders wanted to be the polar opposite of the Sharia-like law of Moses. But if the Ten Commandments were prominently displayed in every classroom, then the kids would believe that lie. That's why religious conservatives want this. They are relentlessly trying to rewrite history to undermine our pioneer example of a secular nation, the only form of governance that can provide religious freedom. Our model has become the envy of the Western world and is now emulated by older countries that were once the oppressive theocracies that our forefathers escaped and that Christian nationalists now want to drag us back to. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said this bill would promote religious freedom, which of course it won't. It will have the opposite effect, which is the intended effect, to promote Christianity to a privileged position. This bill is an unconstitutional establishment of religion by design. That is the whole point of it, and the only possible purpose behind it, so it must not pass.
All right, members, excuse me, any questions for this witness? All right, we appreciate you being here. Chair calls Charles Cruz.
Good morning, my beauties and bees. It is Saturday, and it's 8:38 a.m. where I am, which means it's 9:38 Central, 10:38 Eastern, 7:38 Pacific. Welcome to the show. We are live from the Hive. It's actually a sunny day out, but I'm keeping my blinds closed to control the light. But it looks like a beautiful day out outside. Starting to get warmer out here in West Texas, so I am thrilled to spend my first summer months here, where we are going to, as a Hive, we're going to go out, we're going to catch bugs and look at lizards, and yeah, it's going to be just fun. The future for the Hive is looking like it's full of adventure. Just got to wait for the weather to turn around. Good morning, everybody. So good to see all these familiar faces. Let me just say hi to everybody, because Captive Desk is here. Stephanie Helms is here. Native Atheist is here. AR is here. We have Sumami. We have Ember. We have Deep Arcs. We have Navi. We have Titan Uranus. We have Ryan in the house. Good morning, all my friends out there. Hello. Why? Because weed, bro. And anybody out there who's just lurking and hanging out, good morning. It's good to see you. It's good to see everybody. Always so happy to have a nice turnout for Live from the Hive. All right. So, the new tradition on Live from the Hive has been to, let's look at our polls from last week and see what we're covering. So, this is going to be a fun week. Because, where are ya? Yeah, because we have Wendigo winning. And when it comes to Wendigo, I have a lot to cover. We have an hour-long segment we're going to be covering. So, we may not get through all of it. Oh, thank you, Ember. Appreciate you so much. Things are kind of tight right now, so I do appreciate you. I started a new job, so waiting on my first paycheck and just kind of ramening it up until then. So any support you can give me is much appreciated. All right, and now after we finish up with Cryptic Corner, we move into the weekly weirdness here, and oh my gosh, it flipped since I scheduled it. I'm sorry for anybody who voted for the accursed jewels, but the polls, I don't know how to get them to close besides delete them. So, but Michigan Triangle won before the end of the poll time frame. So that's what we're doing this week. If I would have checked it this morning, I might have switched it back because I've been excited to do this accursed jewels episode. I've been messaging Stephanie about it, Stephanie Helms, because we are both Lord of the Rings nerds, and this accursed jewels always makes me think of the Silmaril, or the Silmarils, which are 3 jewels that preceded the ring and were much more important than the ring in the Lord of the Rings mythos. Yeah, they caused like the world to be. These jewels caused the world to be destroyed. Basically twice. Once it was destroyed by sending everything into darkness, and then once it was destroyed by actually being sunk into the sea. But I digress. We aren't going to get too much into that today because we're not doing the jewels. We're doing the Michigan Triangle, which is what people wanted. Giving the people what they wanted and what they voted for. So if you voted for Cursed Jewels, I'm not going to run another poll this week, and we're just going to do a Cursed Jewels next week. So I'll run a poll for Cryptic Corner, but I will not be running a poll for Cursed Jewels since this flipped on me after I created the stream. So this is what's going to cover next week. It's set in stone. There will be no weirdness poll this week. So, but that also means that the following week's poll will have 2 new options, and you can come onto this post right here on my community page, this post, and comment on what you would like to see in our week of weirdness. Yeah. So, because two things are going to be added. So whatever you put on there, and to clarify what the difference between the weirdness and the Cryptic Corner. Cryptic Corner generally tries to focus on an entity or entities, whereas this gets a little more broader. It's everything from, my favorite topic right now is the Tartaria stuff, but Tartaria is a good example. Curses, alternate history, time travel, anything where people are basically promoting woo. And I try to focus on the content creator that's putting this out on that week, as opposed to the subject matter itself. So we'll talk about the person's position, but I digress. We're getting ahead of ourselves, because before we even get into the weirdness, we have to do a Cryptic Corner. And that is my alarm to tell me that it is Cryptic Corner time. So, my beauties, my bees, I will see you over in Cryptic Corner in just a moment. Hello, hello, once again, my beauties and bees, and welcome to another installment of Cryptic Corner, where we explore the entities of the unexplained, supernatural, paranormal, and hidden, the mysterious, the alien, the accursed, and the forbidden. I'm your host, Miss Bumble Bree, and today is brought to you by the I guess I want to say the Canadian Mounties. I don't know. What is today brought to us by? We are talking about, we've covered other entities similar to this. A lot of the shapeshifters of different Native American groups and, of course, European werewolves and things go kind of linked together with tonight's topic, but it is different. It is unique because, like, whereas like Lushi, the Navajo skinwalkers, they are sorcerers, right? The werewolves of European lore, a lot of times, at least in the traditional works, they were sorcerers with like magic belts and stuff. So these are people that like seek out the dark arts and pursue that to its inevitable end. Today's creature, though, today's shapeshifter, I guess you could call him, does not follow that mold because generally speaking, the curses and abilities of the Wendigo were thrust upon the person who is possessed of the Wendigo spirit, right? Due to some horrific act of cannibalism. Now, there are a few Wendigo cases that I'm like familiar with, including legal cases. I did make sure to find a video that covers that, because I like to talk about Jack Fiddler, because he's like the quintessential moving from, or saying our ways as Europeans are superior to the ways of the native peoples. Which, do what you want with that. I don't know how to tell you. I have. We'll get to it when we get to the Jack Fiddler story. But I'm going to start off. Oh, hey, look, it's me. I need to switch that. That shouldn't be that screen. It should be. Yeah, it should be that one. So we're doing one of these cheesy top 5 channels. Top 5 scary videos elite. Yeah, and this channel, it's basic. It's got a lot of subscribers though, 93K. So if you should do your part to help me pass up this channel. I'm like right behind them. I got 1.29K and they've got 93.3K. So it's basically we're basically neck and neck. but you can help by subscribing to my channel and making things, no, I'm just I know people like these kind of channels better. People like channels that present this stuff as real as opposed to channels who set out to debunk it. But just to be clear, though, this is a long-ass video. It's got this longer than what we usually cover on Cryptic Corner. I don't know. It's actually multiple videos stitched together, though, so it might have some duplicates. And if it does, we'll probably bounce around a little bit. I got about, well, you saw where I was on it before I decided it's the one I wanted to cover. But usually I do about a 20-ish minute video. This one's 52 minutes. So this might be a long-ass Cryptic Corner. But if you like that, stick around, because we are going to do the long haul. Yeah, and I'll see if people enjoy that on the premiere too. Oh, hey, Thomas. Thomas and John showed up. Thomas from Wild World. Your new stuff has been pretty good. Still waiting for that saltwater crocodile range, but I requested saltwater crocodile range video because I love the idea of seeing how far out in the Pacific these sightings go. If you need help with researching that, hit me up. All right. And yeah, John, are you out here being silly? Okay. Al Trucker's in the house. Hello, and Navi. Oh, we're filling up. Everybody's filing in. Dr. Kip is here. What? Good morning, Dr. Kip. All right. Who's ready to Wendigo it up? These videos literally jumps right into it, right? It's like, boom, number 5. Okay, but there's not just 5, because this one ends here, and then it switches guys. It like goes from that guy to this guy. So, let's go!
Coming in at number 5, we've got Jack Fiddler, Wendigo Hunter. And we'll kick this one off with not 1, not 2, but 14 purported Wendigo sightings. Possibly more if Jack wasn't able to get them before his untimely death. Back...
Thomas, obviously, hopefully it's obvious I'm just teasing you, but Thomas has put out some great videos in the last couple of weeks that's boom, back to back, so I might plug those later on Breeze Bestiary after I do the Gila Monster section.
In the day, there was a man who claimed to be able to kill Wendigos. This man was known as Zauno Hishigo Galbo, but European settlers just knew him as Jack Fiddler. He lived in what's now known as the Sandy Lake First Nation and was a well-respected healer. He would go from community to community, ensuring the health of many people, but often he was sought out for more macabre business, fighting cannibalistic creatures. Jack would euthanize anyone who felt that the curse of the Wendigo was upon them. They sought him out to end their lives before they caused any trouble for their loved ones in their communities. Potions and ceremonies would mitigate damage, but death was the only surefire way to end a Wendigo's curse. And even then, it's a little tricky to deal with. So Jack would go from place to place, ensuring that Wendigos truly found their final resting place.
Just to be clear, what this, through a modern lens, I mean, I don't know the full extent of the mental illness associated with Wendigo sightings, right? I don't know for sure. But this seems like a precursor to death with dignity for people suffering from mental illness who thought that they were a burden on their families. Yeah. But the Mounties thought he was a murderer.
Euthanizing the cursed individual, he would also perform a ritual cremation and burial to seal it away for good. Tales of his exploits eventually reached the Mounties, though, who did not seem to think what Jack was doing was community service. After some investigation, they found out about a woman who was thought to be possessed. She was choked to death by her father-in-law and his brother. Any guesses as to who the brother was? Jack Fiddler. So the Fuzz arrested the men, claiming that what the law forbids, no pagan belief can justify. Jack eventually managed to slip away from the police before his trial and killed himself to avoid the long arm of the law. 14 counts of murder is a tough sentence, especially when assisted suicide and demon hunting were not considered valid defenses. Coming in at number 4, we got the
And I mean, the irony of a country that's built on Christian foundations deciding that somebody else executing someone for what do you call it? Religious crimes, I guess, for something along those lines, for possession, for making sweet love to the devil or whatever, because just and maybe not Canada so much. Were there any Canadian witch trials? I don't know if there were or not. Let me see. Canadian witch trials. While Canada's history includes instances where people were accused of witchcraft, especially in the 17th and 18th century, there were no widespread witch trials in the same vein as the Salem witch trials in the colonial America. Okay. Early accusations in New France. Yeah, 1661. Danielle Vieux was arrested and charged with practicing sorcery against a servant girl. So these, and you had Anne Lemoc, a tavern keeper in 1680s Montreal, was accused of witchcraft, adultery, and suspected infanticide. So, I mean, they were they were able to, they were saying, yeah, we can execute people for religious reasons on our end, but if you do it on your end, we're gonna execute you.
Wendigos of Blackwood Mountain. Boom. Butterfly effect. This pod of people eaters comes from the choose your own horrific adventure game Until Dawn, featuring a pre-Bohemian Rhapsody Rami Malek. In this game, you make decisions that will end up sealing the fate of 8 unlucky vacationers. See, this group of pals decided to return to Blackwood Mountain a year after a tragic disappearance. They brought some friends up and pulled a nasty prank, resulting in one running off into the night with the people and becoming a depraved monster in order to live. I'd take the long nap, to be honest. Coming in at number 3, we've got a deep. The remaining miners became Wendigos. Known is that the area had been frequented by Wendigos for centuries. European miners came to the area back in the 1800s and were warned off by natives who claimed the mountain was sacred. As settlers tend to do, they ignored this advice and started excavating anyways. In doing so, they released the Wendigo spirits. Later on in the mid-1900s, a group of miners came back for some of those sweet, sweet minerals. They fell victim to some unfortunate accidents though and found themselves trapped in the mine shafts, forced to cannibalize.
Say it was clustered around Massachusetts colonies because that's where the religious motherfuckers were. I call them religious motherfuckers because I am descendant. Yeah, I mean, but there were, all the colonies had, you know, to some degree, some ingrained European religious zealotry, right? Just a variation in degree. The further south you went, the more Catholic it got, right? The more north you went, the more Protestant it got. But the east coast of the New World was very, very religious, very European religious. Why does this Wendigo have a butterfly tattoo on its forearm or its upper arm? Like where I have this, Wendigo has a butterfly. We should switch because the Hellcat I got on my arm or my shoulder would look better on you, and that butterfly would look better on me.
To survive, the remaining miners became Wendigos. After a powerful Wendigo was killed, its spirit was transferred to the unfortunate friend who ran off into the night. And you guessed it, this unfortunate individual came back with a vengeance. One by one, depending on how you play it, people fall victim to the Wendigo of Blackwood Mountain.
I didn't know you had a butterfly tattoo, my girl.
Sometimes becoming terrible creatures themselves. So next time you're in a survival situation, ask yourself if it's worth eating people and becoming a depraved monster in order to live. I'd take the long nap, to be honest. Coming in at number 3.
So, let's be clear here. There are a lot of people who would trade in, their humanity for superpowers, for the super strength and savagery and stealth and all these mystical powers that come from being a Wendigo. There are so many people that would trade their humanity in for that. It's not even a question. People are sick for the most part and just want power. I'm sorry, I'm being a freaking doomer, but yeah. Not Wendigos. Witches and witch trials is what I meant. Seems more of a New England deal. Was the Wendigo getting a prostate exam, Al? Dogs are frozen with fear when a butterfly lands on their nose. Yeah.
got a deep woods discovery. There's nothing quite like having your expectations subverted, yeah? I don't want to spoil too much of this story before I tell it, so here we go. I found this one in green text format, and it seemed...
I'm not all that off put by cannibalism. I'm not like, oh, I'd eat a person, but what I'm saying is that ritual cannibalism has been part of the human experience since for tens of thousands of years. We'll just say that. Maybe hundreds of thousands of years would probably be a better explanation. The problem with cannibalism in general is prions, right? I mean, obviously, if it's going to make you deteriorate physically and mentally, then you ought not do it. But as far as like cannibalism and ritualistic cannibalism as part of a culture, I'm really indifferent to it. As long as, because at that point it's consensual and expected in the culture, which I have no problem with. I imagine that, you know, when the European folk got to these different, and it's not just, you know, the Caribbeans, the Caribs, who are actually, you know, where we get words like barbecue, which barbecue was initially a method of cooking human flesh. So do with that what you will. But yeah, we covered Roanoke a couple of weeks back, and there was cannibalism there because people would get desperate and starving. You know, of course, you got the Donner Party, the soccer team that got stuck in the mountains. Cannibalism.
Seems to be coming from a person living in a rural area. Every year they find that hiking in the wooded area near their home is quite pleasant in the fall, so they head out to do just that. However, they seem to find some
Bugbot's still going on about water horses. We'll fix
the
that.
more overgrown areas unsettling. Makes sense, especially if you're far away from society at large. As they explore a little more, they notice something dive into the bushes, giving them a start. At that point, the hiker has had enough and decides to book it. There's something nearby though, and it seems to be following quite closely. Eventually, the hiker makes it to the end of the trail and realizes that they have to go back where they came from. After the experience they had, they're not looking forward to it. In the end, they do indeed buck up and head back to the top of the trail. When they get to the part where they saw something dive into the bushes, they realize that it wasn't a monster or anything sinister, but in fact a little girl. She calls out for
Oh yeah, I got like lots of little fact nuggets. Stick around. I drop them all the time. My brain's full of a lot of trivial knowledge. It's actually that's all that's in there is trivial knowledge. That's why I do this, because this is like depressurizing. This is like turning the knob to let the steam out of the pressure cooker. Is every Saturday I do this show so I can depressurize my brain from all these useless facts that are in there.
Help, but as the hiker gets closer, a strange feeling washes over him. It looks like the girl is hurt and can't walk on her own, but when the hiker gets close enough for the little girl to see him, she begins screaming bloody murder. Oh no. It's at this point that the hiker gives up all pretenses and eats the girl, taking her form. Bet you didn't see that one coming. Coming in at number 2, we've got the Moose Man. Let's take a quick trip to Alberta, except instead of seeing the mountains...
See, Al, they're going to talk about you right now. Al Trucker, the Moose Man.
Or hockey, we'll go looking for shape-shifting terrors. Hooray! There were tales circulating around for a while about some sort of centaur with moose features instead of horse ones, although many claim these to be patently false. That's not going to stop me from talking about it as if it were real though. This thing lived by the river and never got too close to human settlements. However, it would often kill and mutilate game animals to make them unusable. In fact, it's also said to have been involved in the killing and maiming of many men as well. Beyond the moose-centaur comparison, there isn't much to be said about the way this creature looks.
A centaur moose is fucking lit. I swear that is lit. That is the coolest cryptid. Like in my head, visualizing, like the only thing that I can think of that's cooler than a moose centaur would maybe be like a rhinoceros centaur. A moose centaur, or not centaur, but minotaur. But it wouldn't be a minotaur. It'd be a Minocervus, I guess. Like not service, but like as in cervid. Like the deer family. Yeah. A centaur moose would be cool too, don't get me wrong. Centaur moose could be actually kind of sexy. Well, a minotaur moose wouldn't be that sexy, but a centaur moose could be sexy. A Canadian with like yeah. Anyway, whew, get myself worked up thinking about a centaur moose now.
It's huge, as all moose tend to be, and walks around with flesh hanging from its antlers. Like many creatures in the same vein, it reeks of something otherworldly and tends to make hideous noises when encountered. Whether the moose look is its only avatar or one of many forms, we may never know. And finally, at number 1...
Okay. And the flesh dripping from the antlers and stuff, that's like, that's how antlers are shed. The velvet comes off of them. Not on moose, though. Moose, they shed their whole antlers. So maybe somebody saw like a caribou shedding its velvet off of its antlers and had never seen that before. It's like, oh my God, it's a monster. Because it does look freaky when they do it.
Got the Roadrunner. Meep meep indeed. While walking his dog at around 10 p.m., our storyteller came across a couple dead rabbits accompanied by a horrid stench. Assuming it was just a fox or something, he moved right along. Soon after, his dog started acting super weird though. It wouldn't move at all and seemed to be staring at something off in the distance, eyes wide. Then the smell came back. This time he couldn't...
I really hope this music doesn't become a problem that's playing here, because that's going to be... If I have to demonetize this whole freaking segment here with this song playing in the background, I'm going to be pissed. But it sounds like it's maybe royalty-free music, but...
Couldn't quite place where it was coming from, but he'd heard enough stories about bad smells and evil vibes in the woods to know to be careful. He took his dog and got off the path, hiding in some tall grass to the side. That's when he saw it. Something almost indescribable. Gray skin, rotten flesh, a horrible, emaciated horse's head, limbs that only seemed to half work. Made him want to run away at full speed immediately, but...
That's a bit of a stretch to say moose are almost as big as elephants. Elephants, the biggest elephants ever recorded, approach like a 13-foot height at the shoulders. That's, what's it? That's like 4.2 meters. So, right around 4 meters. So, a moose is probably, with their antlers, right around, the max height would probably be under 3 meters, but they are huge. I mean, let's not downplay that. They are absolutely monstrous animals. They're the biggest members of the deer family. Even the extinct Megaloceros, the Irish elk or Irish giant deer of the Pleistocene, was not bigger than a moose physically. It had bigger antlers, but it was not. It and the moose are roughly the same proportions. The Megaloceros just had massive antlers. That's the difference. Imagine being a 9-year-old Sioux running into one alone in the woods of Vermont. I'm Floridian. Oh my God, give me a gator any day. Moose are fucking wild looking, right? Yeah. And they're like semi-aquatic. Like one of the moose's predators is an orca, because they swim in the sea and eat seagrasses and stuff.
That was a bad call with it so close by. Sneaking seemed to be the better choice. The man and his dog started creeping away and got about 50 feet. The creature was out of sight now, and the man thought he could start running. But apparently the Roadrunner knew exactly where he was trying to sneak away to and was immediately on his tail. Thankfully, the sneaking gave this man and his dog a bit of a head start, and they were off to the races. As they ran from this awful beast, the man could hear it breathing. It sounded like an overexcited child, happy to be running in the woods in search of something good. Thankfully, getting back to the jagged gravel path proved to be a challenge for the Roadrunner. Whatever was wrong with its limbs made it difficult to traverse the rocky terrain, and eventually it gave up, screaming all the while. The man hasn't seen the creature again, but that's no guarantee that it's not around. Shapeshifting isn't uncommon with these kinds of things.
Number 5, the literal legend.
So then we just jump right into another list here.
story has some variation between tribes, but most of the general details are the same. My research has shown that some tribes believe that the very first Wendigo was a warrior who made a deal with an evil spirit in exchange for the skills, strength, and stature to defeat his foes and save his tribe. He was transformed into the Wendigo, and after the battle was banished by his people. Wendigo is a malevolent spirit who possesses...
What scares me is how giant moose can go through a forest too thick for any person and not make a noise, right? With their giant, they have this, 8-foot antler span, and they're like just like moving gracefully through a thick forest. It's wild.
People, with some versions of the tale having this be a result of a person's greed, and others having a more disturbing cause. A common version of the legend is that when people are caught...
Callback, Antjer, our moose Canadian Kelpies. We covered Kelpies last week. That will be on Cryptic Corner Fridays here coming up soon. But if you can't wait, it's last week's Cryptic Corner, and you can go back and watch that. Definitely. But yeah, I think a moose would probably thrash you like a Kelpie.
In times of famine or in extreme survival situations, they sometimes have to resort to eating human flesh in order to survive. This resulted in them transforming into a Wendigo, who would have an intense craving for human flesh that could never be satiated, no matter how much they consumed. Some tribes describe the Wendigo as a creature who grows with every person they eat, so that they can never be full, making them simultaneously starving and gluttonous. In his book, The Manitus, The Spiritual World of the Ojibwe, First Nations teacher and scholar...
That is an important factor of the Wendigo lore. They're never sated. They are always hungry and starving. And a lot of times they'll depict them as emaciated because it demonstrates that factor. But sometimes it's just a spiritual glut, right? And they don't look especially emaciated. But am I saying that right? Emaciated, famished, starving, skin and bones.
Basil H. Johnston gives the following physical description of the creature. The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones. With its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody, unclean and suffering from the suppuration of the flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. Wendigo's level of cunning in speech vary from version to version, with some tales having him imitate the voice of a loved one in order to coax their victims closer.
That is very Skinwalker-esque, to imitate the voices of loved ones. That is a lot of the folklore around Skinwalkers in general, but also, of course, part of the lore for Wendigos. So, I mean, these are the correlations that I was talking about at the beginning, with different types of folklore overlapping to build a broader understanding of the human mind in relation to these topics.
A particularly
we're not getting through this video, by the way. We're 8.5 minutes in of a 52-minute video, and we've been going for Cryptic Corner for a whole half an hour now. We're not getting through the whole thing. But I am going to speed it up so we can get through more of it. Hopefully it's not too fast to understand.
Disturbing folk story that was part of a compilation of tales assembled by a scholar named Lottie Marsden in Ojibwe Myths and Tales Archaeological Report of the Canadian Institute goes as follows. One time, long ago, a big Wendigo stole a boy. But the boy was too thin, so the Wendigo didn't eat him up right away. But he traveled with the boy, waiting for him to get fat. The Wendigo had a knife and he'd cut the boy on the hand to see if he was fat enough to eat. But the boy didn't get fat. They traveled too much. One day they came to a village and the Wendigo sent the boy to the village to get some things for him to eat. He just gave the boy so much time to go there and back. The boy told the tribe that the Wendigo was near them and showed them his hand where the Wendigo cut him to see if he was fat enough to eat. They heard the Wendigo calling the boy. He said to the boy, "Hurry up, don't tell lies to those people." The tribe went to where the Wendigo was and cut off his legs. They went back again to see if he was dead. He wasn't. He was eating the marrow from inside of the bones of his legs that were cut off. The tribe asked the Wendigo if there was any fat on them. He said, "You bet there is. I've eaten lots of you. No wonder they are so fat." Then they killed him and cut him to pieces. This was the end of this giant Wendigo. Number 4, the purpose of the legend.
That's pretty messed up, right? Eating his own legs. Yeah, so it's this is why I strongly believe that the Wendigo mythology stems from prions, right? And maybe some innate mental illness as well. People acting crazy.
Whether the native people believe in the Wendigo as a literal creature or merely as a legend depends entirely on the individual's beliefs and who you ask, and it's frankly really not for me to say. There are certainly a significant number of believers who report sightings, but for the purpose of this entry on the list, let's look at the Wendigo from the perspective that it's a folk legend that was created and passed down for a purpose beyond "look out, snow monster!" Many scholars believe that the Wendigo was created as a cautionary tale and a deterrent. As any Canadian will tell you, the winters here can be long and brutal. This would result in hunting parties being trapped in storms and there being extreme food shortages. In such extreme survival situations, it would not be uncommon for people in their desperation to consider eating members of their community in a last-ditch effort to survive. This was considered extremely taboo, obviously, and the prevailing idea was that in these situations it was the proper response to face famine with resignation and a readiness for death. This lends credence to the idea that the legend was created as a deterrent and a cautionary tale to prevent members of the tribe from eating each other during the long, brutal winters, telling them that indulging in the consumption of human flesh would transform them into a hideous and ravenous monster who would be hungry forever. Some have suggested that the Wendigo's appearance is a reference to the harsh elements of the winter, with their emaciation being reminiscent of the hunger winter caused and their tattered and...
I mean, the imagery of the Wendigo varies across different tribes and cultures, but like sometimes it'll be like this like skeletal deer monster thing. Sometimes it'll be just like a gaunt, skinny, bald person. Other times it'll be like a deer man hybrid or moose man hybrid, as the case may be for the one we just saw. So there's a lot of variety, which is kind of tied into how just shapeshifters in folklore are depicted generally. And you can see a parallel with like European werewolves, for instance, where, you know, sometimes it's just a feral looking human. Other times it is a giant wolf, like literally a giant wolf, and then everything in between. So there's a lot of parallels in this folklore and how it correlates to cautionary tales on how to conduct yourself in times of scarcity.
Bloody lips being reminiscent of the enduring ravages of frostbite. If the tribe believed that someone could also be transformed into a Wendigo due to greed, what better way to deter it than to tell the greedy party to shape up so that they could avoid turning into a Wendigo? The taboo against Wendigo-like actions were so strong that during times of famine, tribes such as the Assiniboine, the Cree, and the Ojibwe would reinforce the supposed dangers with a ceremony known as Wendigo Kanzim Owen, where people would wear masks and dance backwards around a drum. Although the Wendigo works well as a deterrent to man-eating, it is also used in a less literal way that is essential to keep in mind to understand the deeper meaning of the legend.
Number 3, the man in my scope. This next story comes to us from an interview that a YouTuber, Funkalopagus, did with a hunter who thinks he had an encounter with the creature or something else deeply strange late at night. He originally posted this story.
Funkalopagus. I love it. My tribe has Algonquin roots. Haven't heard Wendigo stories, though. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Native Atheist is here. So we got representation.
To Reddit with the name Perpetual Connection, so that's what we'll call him if it comes up. He says he was hunting boar. He was saving up for a while to get a special thermal vision scope. He took it to a range and waited from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. to find a good boar to bag, but surprisingly wasn't finding anything. And he noted that the area that he went up to was shockingly empty of wildlife, no deer, no rabbits, no coyotes, nothing, as opposed to it usually being pretty plentiful. So he was getting himself ready to leave, assuming it must have just been a bad day, when he heard a crunch come from the direction that he'd entered the park. So he raised his scope to see what it was and saw initially what he assumed was a bear, some big mass on his scope. He zoomed in a bit and jolted when he realized it wasn't a bear, but looked a bit more like a man. Now, what was disturbing him was that he was about 30 miles away from any other public areas. And there were no other cars parked around, no wildlife to speak of. The only other living thing next to him was this person in his scope, who happened to be completely naked, twitching and grabbing at all the foliage. The OP then says that the mysterious figure looked up at him and in an extremely unsettling, high-pitched feminine voice began to call out for help. The hunter believed that he was...
Okay, when I go out into the woods and do this stuff, you know, it's not cool for these people to go out and tell everybody on the internet what I'm doing in the woods naked. It's just not cool.
was being trapped and scrambled to escape. He said it didn't sound like this voice should be coming from this entity. And he said that the creature was staring at him with a wide smile and unfurled itself standing on its back legs, standing 6 feet tall or maybe more. He pointed his weapon at the unknown entity and warned for it to stand down and said that it arched on its fours again and hissed at him like a cat before disappearing into the brush, screeching in wail. The hunter would return to his car.
It was definitely me. Definitely. And I'm not 6 foot. I'm only 5'10". But it can be terrifying.
And drive off in an absolute panic, I think like most of us would, and he would tell authorities what he saw, but he was only reprimanded for hunting at night. I mean, fair enough. If I reported that story to the sheriff or something, I think I as the sheriff would hear that and just, scratch that off, be like, oh, I'm not messing with that. So what do you think? Did he happen to come across someone in the woods who was just having a wild night on all of the substances, or was that a close encounter with death that he narrowly avoided? Number 2, the 2019 sighting. This next sighting happened in 2019. It's the same time as the first point. Coincidence? Absolutely, but worth mentioning nonetheless. This next story was posted to Reddit by a user named Bradley Innovates. Bradley tells about how he had just been discharged honorably, don't worry, from the Marines and was returning home to his home state of Alabama, sweet home Alabama, and was catching up visiting on old friends. His best friend Jacob in particular, the two of them had been friends their whole life and usually got up to, boyhood stuff, hanging out in the woods, that kind of thing. The two of them traveled out to a secluded campsite that they'd enjoyed when they were younger, bringing
Okay, I've never heard Wendigo folklore from Alabama. It's usually like a Canadian or upper Midwest Great Lake area phenomena. Wendigos in the deep south? Yeah, okay. We need to Rougarou it.
a long arm with them for target practice. The two were chatting and eventually got onto stories of cryptids in the woods, namely, you guessed it, the Wendigo. His friend told him one could summon this creature by speaking its name 3 times into the woods, like Bloody Mary. I've said its name like 9.
It's like Beetlejuice. We just watched Beetlejuice last night, since Byron hadn't seen it yet. So we watched it, but we didn't watch this. We haven't watched the second one, but I'm not a big fan of the second one, honestly. This, other than the wedding scene, the musical number for the wedding scene, the second one's just kind of
times in this video. I'm speaking into a camera, so I hope that's okay. I hope I'm not cursing you out there. It might be best just to sage your house a little bit after watching this video. Anyway, Bradley played along and spoke his name out 3 times, only to discover nothing happened, until he heard a snap in the woods, and his reflexes instinctively darted backwards. A few coyotes ran by, and his friend decided that it was enough scares for the woods and started to pack up when a tree began to fall forward towards them. Now, if that wasn't already unnerving, the Redditor said the next thing he heard was the voice of his friend's younger sister calling out to them both, except they didn't bring her along, and she wasn't anywhere nearby, and that's when both of them knew they were in far deeper trouble than they thought. They claimed that they saw an emaciated
badass depiction of Wendigo there. Did you see that? Let me see if we can get you.
She wasn't anywhere nearby, and that's when both of them knew they were in.
Look at that. That's so cool. It's like all the different forms a Wendigo can take. I like that art piece.
Far deeper trouble than they thought. They claimed that they saw an emaciated, fleshy monster, deathly thin, with next to no meat on its bones, skin as pale as ash, and a vibrant blue eyes. That actually sounds pretty familiar, to be honest. The men fired at it and ran screaming from the woods towards their car. They escaped, horrified by what they saw, but luckily alive. If this story is true, then that has to be a real-life encounter with the creature. Number 1, Jack Fiddler. There truly aren't many sightings or stories of Wendigos, and
we just watched Jack Fiddler a second ago. Well, I guess we're gonna do it again.
Indigenous people don't particularly like to share these stories out of their tribes. Despite the popularity on apps like TikTok, it's a pretty niche bit of folklore. Of course, it could also be because there are people out there maintaining the local population. Jack Fiddler, or Zanhano Gahingogawa, was an Ojibwe shaman living in Sandy Lake in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He was renowned among his people for being a hunter of the supernatural, defending his tribe from threats that no one else would be willing. There are many documented cases of indigenous people who, feeling themselves lose control to the appetite or the spirit within them, would request that someone close and trusted would be the one to finish them off. This could be a close friend of the family or a family member. It was an act of mutual trust. Zanhano Gahingogawa claims to have felled 14 Wendigo.
It's like, to me, it sounds like maybe a death with dignity situation, like I was saying, for someone struggling with severe mental illness, right? But
goes during his lifetime like this. Of course, not everyone would see it this way. By 1906, word would reach the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Mounties, that to them, there was this is a quote, a band of pagans in the habit of killing one another whenever one gets delirious through fever or other causes. By 1907, the Mounted Police had arrested Zanhano Gahingogawa and his brother Pescoquan for the death of Pescoquan's daughter-in-law. Locals in the tribe decried the decision, saying they didn't understand, and that the man they were accusing of being a killer was a quiet, dignified man who lived with a clear conscience. After 15 weeks of imprisonment, Zanhano Gahingogawa would escape from the police escort holding him. When they found him, he was lying on a rock with a sash tied and a knot around his neck. It was his way out of escaping persecution.
Coming in number 5, we've got the Stalker Challenge. Right on, you might hear that name and think it's one thing, but it's actually probably not the first conclusion your mind lands upon. The Stalker Challenge isn't about following someone around or testing a pal's skills at going unnoticed in the dark. It's actually a reference to a popular PC game called Stalker, where players explore an alternate reality Chernobyl exclusion zone. A lot of folks praise it for its lonesome and isolated atmosphere and the more realistic gunplay. Plenty of online military enthusiasts, survivalists, and Tarkovsky fans enjoy the game. So when we say that this Wendigo sighting harmonica. Like a true survivalist, he hunted some small game, made a meal of it, and explored the surrounding area. Snacking on the rabbit he'd hunted, he heard some rustling coming from the bushes.
How many ad reads do you have in this video, homie?
Think anything of it. The next day, he was startled awake by some screaming. Weird, especially considering how far he was from civilization. Grabbing his rifle, he went off in the direction of the scream. It didn't seem to come from one singular location, and eventually the writer got lost. After a long day wandering around, he found his way back to the camp he'd set up, but now somebody else was there. There was a humanoid form in tattered clothes, staring down at his fire pit, unmoving. Worried that this person might be injured, the writer called out to him. No response. After a few minutes of standing there, staring at him, he again asked if he was all right. The humanoid figure turned to him and said, "I wouldn't worry about it." This set off alarm bells for the writer, who began to back away. At that point, the humanoid mentioned that he could go for another meal right now, prompting the writer to book it out of there. Hearing the humanoid running behind him, he turned around and shot blindly, apparently
Yay! Steph, congratulations on your 10 months as a cryptic creeper. Steph has been by my side with a lot of the content stuff that I've been doing for, what, about years. We'll just say years. It's been at least 2 years since me and Steph became friends. But the appreciation I have for you and for the work that we do together at the Transpositions cannot be articulated in words. I love you, Steph. Thank you so much for being there for me. My Unfinished Journey, Hail Nero, Hive Science, and Canadian Cryptids. Love ya, 222. Thank you so much. Every little bit helps right now. Again, like I said at the beginning of the show, started a new job here recently, so waiting on my first paycheck, and things are a bit tight right now. So any little bit helps. Appreciate you so much.
Finding his mark. The creature screamed, the same scream from earlier, and seemingly disappeared. The writer eventually made it to the road and encountered a car. He didn't look back. Coming in number 4, we've got the Nebraskan Wendigo. If you weren't already wary of traveling alone in Nebraska, now you've got a whole new reason. That's right, a new spooky story of someone's close encounter with a third kind. Maybe not an alien, but hey, this tale comes...
I mean, Nebraska seems a little bit out of the range, too. It's more in the range than Alabama. What the actual hell, Steph? Oh my god. Oh my gosh, Steph. Oh. I don't know who knows this, but if you watch Transposition, Steph just got accepted a new job too, so we're both like we're both starting a new job. So when we do Transpositions, just give us some extra love, because we are both just getting off work and hitting the ground running to bring that show to you every Thursday night. Love you so much, Steph.
Comes from a guy who was a farmhand when he was younger. One night, the farmer he worked for asked if he could figure out who was trampling all the corn stalks at night. Excited to take on guard duty, the farmhand stayed up to see if he could catch the culprit. Armed with the farmer's shotgun and the advice not to shoot unless absolutely necessary, he hung out in a lawn chair and walked around the field a few times. Eventually, he heard rustling from within the cornfield, followed by what sounded like giggling children. This, of course, was the most unsettling moment of the farmhand's entire life. Not wanting to hurt kids, but also not wanting to get children of the corn, he brandished his gun and told them to leave unless they were looking for trouble. The giggling stopped, and the rest of the night went smoothly. However, the next morning, the farmer discovered something a little more disturbing than trampled corn. His cow, which had been left in the barn, was totally exsanguinated. All the blood in this animal was removed somehow and didn't leave any on the floors. The farmer called the cops and somehow managed to land on the explanation that it was some idiot kids, but the farmhand didn't quite buy that. However, the following night, both the farmer and the farmhand stayed up to see if they could find anyone. The farmhand, sitting in his chair again, heard the giggling once more. This time he asked whoever it was to reveal himself, prompting a gigantic humanoid creature with antlers to shuffle out of the field. Bad call, to be honest. The farmhand shot at the beast and began to run away. During his flight, he was tripped by a gopher.
Did you really walk across Nebraska, or are you just trolling, John? That's a hell of an achievement if you did. The furthest I've ever walked was about 15 miles, and that will wreck you.
Hole and fell to the ground hard. Suddenly, it was morning, and the farmhand was back inside the house.
That wrecked me.
Surrounded by the farmer's family. The farmer had told the cops that he was attacked by some random guy, but he chased him off. However, afterwards, the farmer took the farmhand aside and told him that he saw the beast too. It was on all.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, I actually really enjoy the new job I'm doing. I won't go into too much details on it here, but I feel like I'm doing good work compared to what I was doing before.
After the boy tripped, and it took 6 shots from his rifle to scare it off. From then on, they didn't go out after dusk, and they kept guns on them at all times around the farm. Coming in at number 3, we've got the frogs. Sometimes a story will draw you down one path and then pull out a twist so devious your spine will stay tingled for weeks.
Frogs? What? What do frogs have to do with Wendigos? I'm so confused now.
This is just such a tale. What do frogs have to do with the Wendigo? Well, just
Oh my god, he just said the same thing I did. At least I'm not alone.
sit back and listen and I'll tell you a tale. This comes from Reddit user Unathana, who has a long history of listening to frogs make noise at night. When they were a kid, their grandmother would reassure them that the croaking was actually good as it kept the Wendigo away. Over time, they got used to the sounds and actually found them quite soothing. Flash forward many years, and Unathana is enrolled in post-secondary education, taking a course on Native American literature. The Wendigo that they're learning about here is described a little differently than they remember their grandmother talking about. Frogs don't really do all that much to protect against such a creature. A damn shame. They then moved to a new place on the
So, frogs, they are a good warning system. Like when you're, if you're in the woods, like camping or hunting or whatever, at least in the warmer months, the frogs will let you know if something's approaching you because they will shut that up. Sometimes they'll even jump into the water, or so you'll hear splashes and you'll know something's coming.
on the edge of town within a stone's throw of a pond just packed with frogs. The noise was once again comforting to them, and they tended to keep their windows open to hear them and enjoy the balmy summer heat. However, the night they recounted this story, things were different. Gone was the heat as well as the sound of frogs. In fact, it was unseasonably cold and the night was quieter than ever. This did not bode well for Unathana, not one bit. Every passing second meant more dread, with nowhere to run or hide. The Wendigo was out there somewhere. Better watch out. Coming in number 2, we've got Anansi's Goat Man. One of the best-known Wendigo green text tales. The proliferation of spooky encounter stories on 4chan's paranormal board had a large impact on creepypasta culture in the early 2010s.
Okay, so with the Anasazi, Anasazi just means it's not a Navajo word for ancient enemy, which is the term they use for the pre-Pueblo people. So it's really like it's kind of a slur. It's a Navajo word for the proto-Pueblo cultures. So yes, like and share the stream. We're here every Saturday morning looking at this stuff.
Usually told from a first-person perspective in bullet point form. Well, Anansi's tale starts as a green text, maybe to entice more readers to stick around, but soon becomes a more traditionally written story. It chronicles his trip out to Alabama to visit family and the very strange things that happened while in the rural landscape. He and some cousins went out to a little cabin slash...
Second at time we've had someone claim Wendigos in Alabama. Like, what? I've never... I don't think of Alabama in Wendigos. I think of the South. You got Southern Fried Bigfoots, or as we call them on the Cryptic Corner t-shirts, the Swamp Boogers. And then you think like Rougarou from Louisiana, things like that. Maybe devil monkeys when you get into the Appalachian area, but Wendigos? Or wild men in the Appalachian area too, but Wendigos, I don't really think of Wendigos, Alabama Wendigos. Just because that word, the Wendigo, is like an Ojibwe, sorry if I butchered that there, word. So there weren't a lot of Ojibwe folks in Alabama. I mean, there was a trade network, I suppose, all the way up the Mississippi, especially during the mound builder era, but I digress.
Trailer in the woods and brought some neighbors and other local kids with them. At first, it was just a smell, something like copper or blood that washed over the area. Nobody could explain it, so they tried to ignore it. Then strange figures appeared in the trees, making awful noises. Folks were freaked out, so they ditched the fire and went inside, which resulted in plenty of loud bangs at the door. Understandably, lots of people were scared and wanted to leave, but trekking back through the woods late at night with no weapons, with all this going on, seemed like a bad idea. They decided to stick it out till morning and then leave once whatever rednecks in the woods stopped messing with them. Soon they realized that there were 12 people in the cabin at some point, and now they were just down to 11. Uh-oh. So the next morning, some people left, but Anansi and his buddy Tanner stuck around with a few more folks. The copper smell came and left over and over again, and soon enough, they realized that one of the people they were with was acting weird. She ran off slack-jawed into the woods, and nobody saw her again. Tanner's cousin showed up later with a gun and claimed to have seen that girl gibbering alone in the woods. He tried to talk to her, but she didn't respond. Weird. On the last night everyone was at the cabin, somebody fired at the figure in the woods, causing it to scream and thrash for hours. During this time, everyone tried to get some sleep in the cabin while Tanner stood guard with the gun. Half asleep, he noticed someone come in from the bathroom and fall asleep on the floor.
Hey, I want this. This is what I want for my home. Altered bust like this. That is a dream of mine. I would rather have a bus, but obviously a cargo van would work. That's my goal. Something where I can travel the country doing this very thing, but actually going on locations. That would be a dream come true for me, to get a van or a bus or something where I can traverse the country hunting monsters, basically. Like Scooby and the gang. Dream come true.
But that put their head count at higher than you remember. It's a bad sign.
Not really come true, because it's never going to happen, but I can dream.
Just to be safe, he continued to pretend to sleep in the guard chair and noticed that the new addition would convulse and thrash around from time to time. The next morning, everyone left except Tanner, who said he'd lock everything up. Checking the bathroom that the extra body came in from, he noticed the bathroom window was wide open. Whatever this creature was, it was infiltrating their cabin and pretending to be another person the whole time. Horrifying. And finally, at number 1, we've got the gun nut green text. We'll cap off this list with one more green text similar to Anansi's story, but with a different twist. A group of friends from college decided to take a trip out to an uncle's cabin. The stench of blood and copper was just as prevalent here, and over time, the strange event stacked up. The friends heard their own voices off in the woods, calling out for people to come find them. Dead animals were left all over the property, culminating in 2 halves of a deer being thrown at the side of the cabin. Thankfully, these
This is like Skinwalker Ranch sort of stuff. Mobile Hive unit. Yeah, it would be so cool to have like a yellow and purple van. Like that's Life in the Hive themed, right? And I travel around, go into different locations. Obviously, I'd have to stay mostly in the U.S. or once I get my passport, I'll be able to go to Canada and Mexico and stuff too. But just to travel around, hunting down folklore and doing like on location videos about it would be just an amazing dream come true for me. It's something to do with my life.
Were all a bunch of gun nuts with experience making homemade thermite, and when the going got bad, they got to work. Preparing to leave the cabin in the middle of the night, they had different roles for dealing with their Wendigo assailant. Some took point with rifles, while others...
Why do they keep waiting until night to... Oh, there goes my earbud. Why do they keep waiting until night to make their break? They've described this as a multi-day event. Why didn't they just bounce during the day?
Their things.
Especially if people are disappearing and transforming and such, and they're shooting monsters in the woods.
But at the last moment, after one pal went running off into the woods to see what he could find, they noticed something odd. A figure looking like their friend who had just run off was in the back of the cabin, appearing extra disheveled, pretending to pack up with the rest of them. This was their sign to open fire and toss one of their homebrew thermite grenades after it. Even then, they can't be sure that they actually put an end to whatever shape-shifting creature was stalking them. The cabin ended up as ash, though, so they're not planning on visiting anytime soon. Coming in at number 5, we've got a Nevadan escapade. This story comes from a self-proclaimed survivalist living in Nevada. They open up the tale with a bit of a disclaimer, saying that they never really believed in the paranormal before this happened. In fact,
no. So the Rocky Mountains are also a bit out of the normal range for a Wendigo. It's actually funny because there's an episode of Supernatural, the show with the Winchesters, and they go and hunt monsters and stuff. That there's a Rocky Mountain Wendigo, and they mention that it's like sort of out of range for what normally is considered the home range or the homeland of the Wendigo.
Prior to experiencing this, they would have assumed that anything strange going on would likely be the result of government experiments and the like. There was absolutely no way they expected an experience like the one I'm about to summarize. So the survivalist had a couple weeks of vacation saved up and didn't want to let it roll over to the next year. Taking that time off, he didn't really know what to do with himself. After a day of doing nothing, he decided to go camping on his own, as none of his friends were able to take any time off. Away he went, packing some basic supplies and grabbing coffee and donuts on the way out. After setting up camp in the middle of nowhere, the survivalist decided to have a little...
What if you want to go to Vegas, John? That's a reason to go to Nevada.
Vodka and do some target shooting. Following an encounter with a jackrabbit, he came across a freshly killed coyote. Seeing as hunting coyotes is relatively common practice in Nevada, he didn't think much of it, but he still saw the way the body was left as strange. Weird smell, too. That evening, while scanning through some capped channels on his ham radio, the survivalist came across something odd. Knowing that there was military presence in the area, he wasn't too surprised to hear the sounds of gunfire coming through the speaker. However, these war game sounds were followed up by what he described as nails on a chalkboard and a blood-curdling scream. Immediately after hearing these noises, the radio crapped out. Reassuring himself that whatever happened there was hundreds...
I've been to Vegas too, but when I went to Vegas, we didn't even... we did stop there. We did stay there a night, but we stayed in like a dive, not a dive, but like a cheap hotel. And we didn't really casino or anything because we had the kids with us.
Hundreds of miles away, he went to bed. The next day, while puttering about, he wandered into a fenced-off military area, letting him know that whatever those noises...
And Death Valley was cool too. We camped, and we camped in Lake Mojave, which is not too far from Vegas. And we went through Death Valley. It was 118 degrees when we went through Death Valley. Good morning, Scott.
Where last night, they were probably closer than he assumed. Exploring this area more, he came across a cave that piqued his interest. Heading inside, he didn't notice anything odd at first, but soon became attuned to a very particular rotting smell. The same smell he noticed when coming across the oddly killed coyote. This tipped something off in his head, and he got the hell out of there. At that point, the survivalist was terrified.
Ooh, that's a pretty cave.
Returning to his camp, he found that it had been raided. Everything was torn up, tossed about, and emptied, and nothing was missing though. While checking on his equipment, he noticed that all of these sounds in the area had stopped, dead quiet as night fell. And that's when he saw it. A humanoid creature standing off to the side, looking straight at him with dark voids for eyes. Hell, it even looked like it cracked a little smile. The survivalist tried to shoot it.
It didn't have antlers though.
but his bullets didn't seem to do anything but piss it off, making it scream in an ungodly fashion. Seeing that his weapon wasn't doing much, he booked it out of there and found a crevice to hide out in until sunrise. And when the sun rose, he got the hell out of there, ASAP. Coming in number 4, we've got the...
So why is this not Bigfoot folklore instead of Wendigo folklore? It's more of a Bigfoot type range, right? In behavior, and nothing about this says that it couldn't have been a Sasquatch. Not that I think that there's actual Sasquatch, but I digress.
Forest ranger. Being a forest ranger must be fascinating, right? Out in the wilderness all day, every day, minimal human contact, keeping an eye on the local flora and fauna, occasionally taking part in rescues, maybe helping a lost hiker find their way, wearing a cool hat. What a life. Of course, it isn't all fun and games. There are plenty of heroines.
I think I do need a smoky hat. I would love to do some park ranger cosplay.
Situations one can find themselves in when deep in the forest. However, mythical monsters don't usually come up during job training, so you better watch out. Take this tale from a forest ranger somewhere in the States. While responding to a missing persons report, they found themselves in a tricky area of the hiking trail. At some point it splits, with one of the paths leading people deeper into the forest instead of back to the service area. Naturally, the ranger called for some backup, and about a half hour later, his backup showed up. Ranger and backup head off into the woods, calling out for the missing person, but to no avail. And when they got to the split in the path, Mr. Backup disappeared too. Trying for a while to contact the missing backup on their walkie, the ranger got a little spooked. Then, when all hope seemed to be lost, he ran into someone matching the description of the original missing person. However, this individual didn't respond to anything the ranger said to them. The ranger took the person back to their truck and told them to wait.
The person was 9 foot tall?
In the back while he went to look for his backup again. At this point, his backup chimed in on the walkie, saying that he'd found the missing hiker at the bottom of a hill with a broken leg and would be returning with him soon, which didn't line up with what he had seen. The ranger went back to the truck and saw that it was empty, with the passenger door wide open and the cage inside bent out of shape. Apparently that kind of stuff had been happening for a while too. Folks hearing their neighbors calling out in the night when they knew their neighbors were on vacation, or perhaps hearing their dog barking outside when the dog was at the foot of their bed. Coming in at number 3, we've got Pet Sematary. If you've only seen the movies based on this Stephen King tale, you might be a little confused. The feature films tend to skim over the folklore at the core of this resurrectory story. Sure, the ground is sour.
If you read the book, you get a lot of the Micmac folklore that's associated with the burial ground in Pet Sematary. So, I mean, do with it what you will. Stephen King's interpretation of Micmac folklore is loose, but it's fun, I guess. It does, but Stephen King does toe the line of like cultural stuff sometimes of problematic, but I think that what Chris was talking about this earlier on Sci-Fi Saturday. It's a product at the time too. It's difficult to represent a people without making a caricature of that people in fiction, especially when that people is largely no longer living the lifestyle that you are referencing, right? Like they've westernized themselves. Am I all blurry? Hold on. Switch this over. There we go. That should fix it. So, I mean, so take with it what you will. By the 1980s, when King was writing Pet Sematary, there was a push to stop mythologizing. Mythologizing? Is that the right word? There was a push to stop doing that with Native American culture. Basically, it was a push for dignity. But before that, you had Popeye and Big Chief Ugga Wug Wug and all that nonsense. You had Italian spaghetti Western Native Americans. Yeah.
Word and stuff comes back to life, but why? Well, if you crack open a spicy little paperback, you'll find out exactly what happens. The spirit of a Wendigo plays a big part. The Creeds move into a lovely home near Ludlow and immediately run into trouble. The kids are getting hurt and the cat is killed by a passing vehicle. And soon enough, they learn about the Micmac burial ground near their residence. Apparently, it was abandoned because the ground was sour. Soon, they learn some tales detailing the Wendigo that lived around there. It would walk through villages late at night, and anyone touched by it would develop a taste for human flesh. Eventually, it touched the burial ground.
Yeah, the Micmac were near your stomping ground, Steph. The Micmac are your people. Or not your people, but like your neighbors.
Self-souring it and causing anything buried there to be possessed by it. This Wendigo spirit seems to orchestrate all sorts of terrible events in the story, playing with the emotions of the people around the Creed house. Some say that the Wendigo even manipulates the grief of everyone in the tale, causing them to act against their better judgment. Through this, it can possess more people and cause more terror. The horror of the Wendigo runs deeper than just the hunger for flesh and physical strength. Coming in at number 2, we have Wendigo psychosis. There is some debate as to whether this disorder is real or not. If you look to the origins of the Wendigo legend, you can find plenty of association with the depths of winter without readily available.
And this just seems so much like lycanthropy that it's hard to not not draw that correlation, right? Am I right? I mean, call me out if I'm saying something wrong, but it seems like Wendigo sickness and lycanthropy among European populations may be expressions of the same disorder in the human mind.
Food, often First Nations people would be subjected to famine. One who would indulge in the taboo of human flesh was considered to be possessed by an evil spirit, one that would never be satisfied. It makes sense, right? The idea of a cautionary tale.
Brian Stevens says cultural things and stereotypes must by nature go hand in hand. The difference is accurate context. Yeah, it's the difference between historical and mythological, right? Of who these people are, because there's, the Manifest Destiny depiction of Native American peoples is very different from what these cultures were really like. First of all, they were often depicted as just a vague conglomeration. Like there was no, like in fiction, there was, they were just engines. There wasn't, they didn't have to worry about like which folklore belonged to which people. They just do a conglomeration to depict this. And this was, from colonial days all the way up through maybe into the 90s. But like, I keep picturing Apache Chief in my head from the cartoons who had the ability to grow.
Involving a slippery slope existing everywhere. One slip up and you can descend into the depths of depravity. This seems to be where the Wendigo legend originates, and since then the Wendigo name has been used to denote a mental illness. Wendigo psychosis is said to be the uncontrollable craving for human flesh, even if other options are available. Often reported in the northeastern American tribes, it started to die out once folks began to study and write about it. This caused a lot of folks to become skeptical, but the idea lived on. Plenty of tales concerning this sudden cannibalism have turned up over the years, and whether an actual Wendigo spirit has possessed these individuals or if they're just experiencing a psychotic break is hard to say. There's an account from some Jesuit missionaries traveling through New France.
I was that way reading It. Stephen King's It is one of my favorite books. Obviously, my favorite book is The Silmarillion, but it's on the list in the top 5. I've read it about 6 times, and that's saying a lot because it's like over, I think it's 1,300 pages. So, commitment to enjoying the narrative. I did read parts of the Dark Tower series. It did not speak to me quite as much. But I do like the Dark Tower series, and it's kind of it's almost like a multiverse of madness of the Kingverse.
Back in the 19th century, where they came across some men with the mysterious psychosis. Keep in mind, these missionaries were likely deliberately painting any First Nations peoples as savages in need of religion, so maybe take this with a grain of salt. They claimed in the report that they met men so ravenous for human flesh that they pounced upon women, children, and even upon men like veritable werewolves, and devoured them voraciously without being able to appease or glut their appetite, ever seeking fresh prey and the more
It's weird to call Italians tomato eaters when tomatoes are a New World crop from the Americas, and they did not have tomatoes in Italy until the 16th century. So, yeah, they didn't have, but the other Italian thing, pasta, it's not Italian either. It comes from China. Italians appropriating, I guess. Garlic, maybe they can have garlic. Garlic can be Italian origin, but yeah, tomatoes are American, and noodles, pasta is Chinese, or I guess I should say Chinese. Cathay, because at that time it wasn't like China wasn't like a cohesive nation. It was there are parts of China now that weren't parts of China then, I guess is the best way to put it, because by that time China had unified to some extent, but China's still growing. Of course, you got Tibet and Hong Kong and things like that that come into play.
Greedily, the more they eat. I mean, that does sound like a Wendigo, doesn't it? And coming in at number 1, we've got Swift Runner. This is a man who claimed to have been possessed by a Wendigo. It seems that he was generally well liked in his community. A Cree man, he was a tour guide that assisted visitors. In
oh my
the
gosh,
late 1870s,
yes. Yeah, Jer, thank you for promoting that. I saw that on the documentary Prime suggestions. There's a documentary on Amazon Prime called Real Engine about the portrayal of indigenous people in cinema. It's on my list, but I haven't watched it yet. I haven't watched it yet either. Not my people, but neighbors to the north. The Passamaquoddy and the Penobscot lands are closer to my location. all parts of the Wabanaki Confederation. I can't believe I said all those names right, and I will not take critique saying I said them wrong, because I know I said them right.
He and his family moved into the woods. Unseen from the winter of 1878 until the spring of 79, the man came back and claimed that his family succumbed to starvation during the harsh winter. He did not look worse for wear, though. Suspicious of the supposedly starving man, folks went to find his campsite, and when they got there, they were horrified to discover human bones, picked clean and hollowed out. There was even a skull with a shoe in it. After this, Swift Runner admitted to cannibalizing his family. Didn't appear to be totally necessary either. There were posts nearby that they could have used to get supplies, and the option to return to community was still on the table. The answer to whether a Wendigo spirit had actually overtaken him died with him, though, as he was hanged for his transgressions. Cannibalism is scary enough on its own, but the idea of a Wendigo makes it that much worse.
Number 5, some strange noises. One of the creature's signature calling cards is said to be its horrific wails, its pain shrieks that don't sound like any animal you'd recognize. It's also said that it's been able to imitate human voices to better lure out its prey. And perhaps those disconcerting sounds were caught on tape as recently as 2019, when a series of howls and shrieks left a hunter and a government biologist searching for answers as to what was going on in those woods. Gino Mikas was hunting with his wife and grandson in northwest Ontario.
Ooh, are we actually going to hear it? I was about to wrap up, but if we're going to hear this, I'll stick around for a minute.
Fairly remote rural area, about 50 kilometers away from the nearest sign of civilization, most likely an en route. Sorry, rest of the world, that joke is just for Ontario. It's a Canadian cryptid, what can I say? At first, I thought it was a moose, but my mind changed when it screamed again and again. Mikas is an avid hunter, a resident of Sioux Lookout, and knows his way around the woods and what creatures should be living in it. He added on,
does he know what an elk bugle sounds like?
saying, I've heard many different animals in the wild, but nothing like this. I grew up hunting with my grandfather for the first 12 years of my life. The howls initially came from the distance, but soon appeared closer. We've got the clip, so why don't you take a listen for yourself and see what you think. Now, some speculated that it could be a grizzly bear. However, there's not
It sounds like a bear.
a lot of evidence for that, since grizzlies don't really live in the surrounding areas. They are known to roam, but there's not reports of grizzly bears nearby. Others speculated that it could be a wolf, which definitely is possible, but you would think that
It does not sound like a wolf. It sounds like a bear. But it doesn't have to be a grizzly bear. It could be a black bear. Black bears, I don't know what people just like, oh, black bears are smaller, so they're not going to sound as deep and intimidating. Black bears can reach like 600 pounds, and they're massive predatory animals. Yes, they can growl and sound scary. They can roar. A black bear can roar. Make no mistake about it.
an expert seasoned hunter would recognize a wolf. So there's a number of people who speculate that this could be the mythical Wendigo caught on tape. And if you're looking for way more stories of folklore, creatures, cryptids, well, you already know what channel I'm going to recommend. It's the one you're watching right now.
All right, we're gonna wrap up here. We're at 36 minutes into a 52-minute video, but we're well into the Wendigo folklore, and we're just gonna there's gonna be a lot of repeats moving forward. John Fiddler and Swift Runner and things like that. So, yeah, to revisit, this was top 5 scary videos elite. And they're like putting stuff out just today. Haunted churches where Satan himself lurks. Ed and Lorraine Warren. Oh my gosh. We'll have to dig into them sometime. Underrated horror movies that will give you nightmares. That doesn't have anything to do with creatures and cryptids, but this was a new video. This was just came out 2 days ago, so that's why I picked it. So it's fairly new. I know it's made up of shorter videos pasted together, so that's why we're kind of able to stop right here because they repeat a lot of the topics. But yeah, so I mean, if you're into this kind of stuff, let me know, and we'll have to revisit this channel again. All their content is like super long though. Like everything's over an hour, which is not great for CrypticCorner. And I'm wondering if when we get further back, if they have shorter ones. But this is like they're putting out tons of content, but it seems like it's mostly stitched together versions of other people's work. So, grain of salt, as they say. But what do you guys think about the Wendigo? What do you believe is the Wendigo? Similar or same as the mental disorder known as lycanthropy from European folklore and history, I guess, and court history, even medical history. Is the Wendigo a bear, like what I think a lot of the Sasquatch stuff is? When it comes to running into people in the woods, is it some nature child that people just don't understand, or is it just racism to paint Native people as savage cannibals, as we've seen time and time again from the history of colonization of both the Americas and the South Pacific. So this type of presentation is not unique to the Wendigo, but the Wendigo itself as a cultural folklore of the people seems to be in my opinion, a way for that population to deal with mental illness that pops up in those long, cold winter months, right? With the cabin fever, and I've had cabin fever before. When I was about 19, me and my then partner lived in a very, very far out in the wilderness cabin house, right? And like miles from the closest neighbor, and about 18 miles from town. Or no, it would have been more like 10 miles from town. But regardless, we got cabin fever one winter because we'd get snowed in for weeks. And eventually we put on our snow gear and freaking walked to town. And because the roads were closed, you couldn't get there. We walked to town. No, is the Wendigo just misspelling of indigo? Well, there's a couple of ways that Wendigo is spelled too. The way you spelled it right there is right as well, but also the WEND it works as well. But let me know in the comments down below how you feel about the Wendigo and what you think the Wendigo could be, and how you think the folklore unfolded about this animal. And until next time, please remember to be kind, take care, and we'll see you again. All right, and live from the Hive, people watching this live, my friends, don't go anywhere. There's more show to come. We are going to be getting weird with it after this little intermission. So stick around, and we will see you in just a few moments.
Did the evolutionists just kill a pterodactyl? Or did they finally catch up to the creationists?
Obviously, there's not going to be a ton of talk about these things. And the thing is, I do believe there was talk about these things. I believe if we study history, the Confederates were able to shoot pterodactyls, back in the Civil War. And they spread these things out. Anybody can look it up online. They spread these things out. And this is a historical fact. So, they spread this thing out, and it's got a huge wing length. And it's a pterodactyl they shot. So, of course, these things have been around. Now, they went extinct, obviously, slowly, but surely. And so, I don't believe that just because, at some point in time, coming from your perspective, that, just because they stopped talking about it means that they never saw it, when we have all this evidence that they've seen it.
Hello, my name is John Pendleton, and I'm speaking to you from Zacatecas, Mexico, center of Mexico. And today I'm going to tell you of my project to attract and capture a real living pterodactyl dinosaur.
But to the Christian, it makes common sense. Of course, there could be a few still alive. That's the first sighting I've heard of in Fort Worth, Texas. I've heard of them in Arizona. A friend of mine knows where some of them live, and he's going to go catch them and put them in a dinosaur adventure land he's going to build. And I can't reveal the details yet.
They're a form of what people call pterodactyl, but if you consider them descended from some type of ramphorhynch or pterosaur.
Hello, my beauties and bees. Welcome to another installment where we get weird with it. And today we are continuing our exploration of geographic triangles. This is not the first time we've been down this road, though, because we had the Bermuda Triangle, probably the most famous triangle phenomena of the whole phenomena, all right? So, but today we are looking at a more I don't know, tighter, I guess would be the good word for it, a smaller, more select location, because we are looking at the Lake Michigan Triangle. And we're just going to look at the wiki real quick here just to give a quick rundown of it, then we'll watch some videos about it. But the Lake Michigan Triangle is, according to modern legend, an area of Lake Michigan where a number of disappearances, shipwrecks, and plane crashes have occurred under unexplained circumstances. Unidentified flying objects and unidentified submerged objects have also allegedly been spotted in the area. The triangle stretches from Ludington to Manitowoc down to Benton Harbor and back to Ludington. The first major unexplained event was the disappearance of the French sailing ship Le Griffon and her crew in the 17th century. Starting with the sinking of the Thomas Hume in 1891, shipwrecks and disappearances became more frequent. The trend may be attributed to better record keeping or the increased population in the area. The first reported UFO sightings was in 1913. And we're going to actually go to this channel called Big Old Boats, which I just like the name of. Welcome to Big Old Boats, a channel dedicated to maritime stories from the great ocean liners to the freighters of the Great Lakes and the modest Pacific Northwest Passage steamers. Ocean liner history is world history, and I love sharing the human stories that shape the world we live in today. Hope you enjoy and learn a bit about some big old boats. And don't forget to be nice to people. I like that messaging. So, they got the Lonely Lighthouse. They got Rogue Waves. Here's our video of the Michigan Triangle. Ghost ships. This channel seems fun, so I'm going to subscribe. If you want to subscribe too, I'll drop the... hold on. What we'll do, we'll drop the link in the side chat. I'm going to start doing that with these too. So if you want to subscribe to the channel, you can. But yeah, let's talk about disappearances and mysterious sightings, ghost ships, things like that. And it's all going to crushing isolation. We're just talking about that with the cabin fever in the Wendigo segment. All right, let's do this. Let's dive in to the Michigan Triangle.
On March 19th, it has already been a deadly season.
27 people have drowned in the Great Lakes, 11 on Lake Michigan alone. 5 of those were just this month.
It is just the second day of summer, and it has already been a deadly season on Lake Michigan.
Drowning deaths on Lake Michigan have increased by 80%.
Something strange is happening on Lake Michigan. While the Great Lakes are well known for their shipwrecks, the stretch of Lake Michigan, running between Manitowoc, Wisconsin, Ludington, and Benton Harbor, Michigan, has seen more than its fair share of mysterious disappearances. The second largest of the Great Lakes by volume, and the third largest by surface area, Lake Michigan is also the deadliest. Every year, dozens of people drown in Lake Michigan.
Yeah, I'll dedicate this to you, Steph. Boats and boats. You're my boat person.
While the lake is a beautiful and attractive destination for vacationers and swimmers in the summertime,
boats and hoes!
Its unique geography, with long, unobstructed parallel shorelines, creates dangerous riptides and undercurrents. These currents are often whipped up by strong wind patterns that create large and unpredictable waves that can sweep unsuspecting victims from the shore into the lake's churning waters. Compounding all of this.
Imagine that. You're just like chilling on the shores of Lake Michigan, just like chilling, having maybe a picnic or something, and boom, rogue wave just washes you out. Next thing you know, you're swimming for your life in the middle of the lake.
The water is often frigidly cold, hovering only just above freezing in the winter months. This gives people only about 30 minutes before hypothermia sets in. While the water warms to a slightly more comfortable temperature in the summer, around 62 degrees Fahrenheit or more, these temperatures can still vary widely and prove deadly in the right circumstances. But the mysteries of Lake Michigan go far beyond these more explainable drownings. From commercial airlines to military fighter jets, schooners, and early French explorers, strange occurrences and unexplained disappearances have plagued the lake from the earliest days of European exploration. The sheer volume of
It's almost like Lake Michigan doesn't want you sailing on it. It's almost like Lake Michigan saying, leave me alone.
Strange occurrences have led some to believe that Lake Michigan has a triangle of its very own. But is there something different about this stretch of water? Or is
Good morning, Christina.
the Lake Michigan Triangle just another attempt to explain the deadly fury of the Great Lakes? I don't know about you, but sometimes for me, summer can feel like a bit of a downer. It feels like everyone is off on these amazing vacations and I am just at home working. There's such high expectations for the season and it feels like it never really quite lives up to it.
Ad read.
You know, I'm really glad that I have a therapist that I can speak to. By the middle of the 19th century, commerce on the Great Lakes was flourishing. Wooden-hulled schooners were the backbone of the burgeoning industrialization of the region. The 106-foot, 115-ton Rosabelle, launched on April 12, 1863 by the Leander H. Boole Shipyard in Milwaukee, was a typical example of one of these workhorses. Designed to carry lumber and other cargoes, the
I am Lake Michigan, says Sumami. 5's a natural explanation, so only a mysterious explanation is available. Okay, right? Because I've been to lean into that on these channels. Morning, Christina.
Encountered more than her fair share of bad luck during her long career. In August 1865, she was enveloped in a heavy squall that seemed to develop out of nowhere. The ferocity of the storm forced her ashore near Grand Haven, Michigan, and left significant damage. Her shaken crew was rescued, but as the ship ground into the shore, Captain Peterson suffered a severe head injury when he was hit by collapsing spars and rigging. Soon after the incident, he died from these injuries. The wreck of the Rosabelle was purchased by a company called Squire & White the following year. She was finally rebuilt and returned to service almost a decade later, in April 1876. Over the next 30 years, she passed through a series of owners. Sometime after the turn of the century, she was involved in yet another collision. While details of the incident are sparse and poorly documented,
It's a big old lake. I wonder why there's so many collisions.
it's clear that she once again sustained heavy damage that required extensive repairs. She was soon returned to service and continued sailing for many years. In 1919, the schooner, now over 50 years old, was purchased by a religious community that lived on High Island. The commune sustained itself by selling potatoes and valuable bird's eye maple. The lumber was highly coveted by furniture makers at the time. The Rosabelle would facilitate the sale of these lucrative commodities. During this period, the schooner was typically piloted by Brother Ed Johnson, who usually relied on his children to round out the crew. It's unclear.
back when you could just have your kids work on your boats. Or child labor. I guess people probably still do have their kids work on their boats when they reach a certain age. I mean, depends on what they're doing, whether I'm going to approve of it or not, but, you know.
Whether Johnson had a valid captain's license. But this didn't matter much, because just before the Rosabelle was scheduled to depart with a load of potatoes and maple lumber in October 1921, Johnson abruptly refused to take part in the voyage. He later claimed that he had a vivid premonition of imminent disaster.
Ooh. Premonitions. Now we're getting weird with it, guys. I told you we get weird. We just had to wait a few minutes. We're going to get weird. It's going to be weird. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. I noticed that that we had a little bit of an exodus. So don't worry. We're still going to be this is still going to be weird. I promise.
Low fog hung over the lake as a new captain, Earhart Gleese, an outsider hired from the mainland, and a small crew cast off and headed for Benton Harbor. The weather was calm and almost pleasant as the Rosabelle soon vanished into the lingering fog. Over the next few days, the calm weather,
lingering fog,
and the fog remained. On Halloween, October 31st, 1921, during a routine voyage, the car ferry Ann Arbor No. 4 came across the overturned hull of the Rosabelle. The wreck drifted in the fog some 15 miles east of Kenosha, Wisconsin.
That's wild that they were able to get this picture with the name of the boat showing. Interesting.
Her stern was heavily damaged, and it was immediately suspected that this was the result of a collision with another ship. Her crew was nowhere to be found. A lifeboat from the ship was missing, but it was soon found nearby, floating empty in the eerie calm. At first, none of this seemed strange. It was assumed that the small wooden schooner fell into the path of a larger ship that failed to see her in the fog. After the collision, the Rosabelle's crew were probably taken aboard the larger ship.
Which is generally what happens when ships collide. If one of them survives, it'll, obviously they'll try to pull the other people aboard.
Ship and safely rescued. But as the days passed, no other ship on Lake Michigan reported any such collision or returned to port with any damage. In the meantime, a steamer called the Cumberland was dispatched to tow the wreck to Milwaukee. They found her about 30 miles from the shore, but as they began to establish a tow rope, a sudden November gale swept over the scene. The Cumberland was forced to abandon.
November Gale could be my stripper name. Just saying.
Abandoned the effort and raced to a safe harbor to wait out the fierce storm. After a few days, they were finally able to return to the wreck and drag her to Racine Harbor, where she was beached for salvage. After a close examination, the Coast Guard announced that the damage to the ship might not have actually been caused by a collision, but they failed to offer up any alternative explanation.
Maybe a rogue wave? What do you think, guys? Hive, what do you think?
A U.S. revenue cutter, the Tuscarora, was sent to the scene to search for bodies, but none were ever found. Reports vary widely.
It's mostly Superior that they say, never gives up her dead, but I doubt Michigan's really willing to give up its dead either. Yeah? I don't know exactly when, but fairly recently they found the lifeboat from the Mary Celeste. No shit. Really? Man, it's been a long time coming.
To a lack of record keeping by the Rosabelle's owners, but it's estimated that she carried anywhere from 9 to 28 passengers and crew. No trace of them was ever found, and the wreck of the Rosabelle was eventually broken up for salvage. What caused the untimely end of the schooner that sailed Lake Michigan for over 50 years remains a mystery.
The first to vanish. Le Griffon.
Trade on the Great Lakes
Ooh, I like that.
flourished long before Europeans ever set foot in the area. Indigenous tribes that inhabited the region as far back as 10,000 BC traversed the lakes in large canoes made from hollowed out trees or bark that measured up to 35 feet or 11 meters in length. But by the mid-1600s, French and other European explorers began establishing tenuous and sometimes fraught trade relationships with the indigenous people in the region that would eventually lead to the decimation of native tribes. One of the first of these
Of course, yeah. Sadly, as the case may be. Got some need to play some Gordon Lightfoot now. Yeah, I should go grab my guitar and talk about the big lake they call Cachagumi.
explorers was René Robert Cavalier Sieur de la Salle.
Sieur de la
Salle
Salle
came from a well-off family in France, but found his way to North America after falling into near destitution. He was granted
No one knows falling into near destitution like your bumblebee.
a parcel of land on the island of Montreal in the colony of New France. He soon began exploring the region and searching for ways to profit from the abundant natural resources, mainly through fur trading. La Salle established a series of French forts on the Great Lakes. It was clear
Should put some lighthouses in your French forts, yo. That way, maybe people don't die so much.
to him that the traditional lake canoes were far too small to transport the volume of cargo he would need to generate the profits he was searching for. And so he had a 10-ton, single-decked brigantine built called the Frontenac, named after one of his forts. Almost immediately, La Salle began planning a significantly larger vessel. On November 18th, 1678, he sent a party to scout out a site where the new ship could be constructed. An area near the mouth of the Niagara River in western New York was selected, and the men began preparing structures for shelter, storage, and defense. Before construction could begin, the Frontenac was lost on Lake Ontario on January 8, 1679, when she slipped her moorings in a sudden storm. The crewless vessel was carried around 9 miles before breaking up near present-day 30 Mile Point. The loss of the Frontenac was a major setback, but construction on the new vessel carried forward. Her keel was
It's kind of badass. It's like the lake stole their boat, drug it out 9 miles into the ocean and just tore it apart. Or not the ocean, into the lake. You play guitar, Bree? I'd like to hear that one day. Yeah, I play guitar. There's been a few streams where I played. If you follow me on Facebook, I also have some, what do they call them? The clips or whatever. Did a cover of Hurt, the Johnny Cash version of Hurt recently.
laid down on January 26th.
Yes, I did sing, but I don't sing great. I do sing.
1679. The project was delayed by a lack of supplies and tension with native tribes in the area. Still, the vessel was completed in August of that year. Named Le Griffon, the 45-ton bark measured somewhere between 30 to 40 feet,
So
or
pretty.
9 to 12 meters in length, with a beam between 10 to 15 feet, or 3 to 5 meters. She was equipped with 7 cannons and had 1 or 2 masts with square sails. Her exact
It's
specifications
kind of an important distinction to have 1 or 2 masts, right, Steph? I think that makes a big difference on how the ship is able to maneuver choppy waters. If I'm wrong about that, Steph, please correct me. But the difference between single square sail and 2 square sails is quite significant.
have been lost to history, but she was by far the largest fixed-rig sailing vessel to traverse the Great Lakes at the time. Once she was completed, La Salle sailed Le Griffon on a treacherous voyage up through Lake Erie, Lake St. Clair, and Lake Huron before finally reaching Lake Michigan. The sight of the giant ship elicited a great deal of excitement and curiosity from the indigenous people in the area, and they were frequently surrounded by canoes filled with people eager to get a closer look. By
Till they start firing cannons at ya.
September, La Salle landed at what's now known as Washington Island. but was then known as Potawatomi Island at the entrance of Green Bay. There they were greeted by a number of Potawatomi tribesmen. Their chief, Onanguise, was already familiar with LaSalle, and the two were said to have a great deal of respect for one another. The Potawatomi had a good relationship with the French. They traded 12,000 pounds of fur for European goods, including fish.
I got 12,000 pounds of fur for you, baby.
Hooks, guns, gunpowder, knives.
God damn it! I have the. I'm going to listen to some Gordon Lightfoot after I finish here. I am. The legend lives down from the Chippewa down of the big lake they call Catchagumi.
Kettles, various other tools, beads, and clothing. LaSalle was very pleased with the expedition. Le Griffon was packed with valuable furs
Le
that were
Griffon.
sure to grant a
I'm going to keep saying these names because I like saying French names. Le LaSalle, Le Griffon.
considerable profit, and his relationship with the Potawatomi promised a mutually beneficial trading partnership.
Potawatomi, that's what I want. Oh, yeah.
On September 18th, 1679, Le Griffon departed Washington Island.
Is
with
that
a
Le Griffon? Because it has like 5 sails.
crew of 6 bound for Niagara.
I don't think 6 people could sail that ship.
LaSalle decided to remain in the area with a small crew to further explore along the coast of Lake Michigan. The weather was calm as Le Griffon sailed away. Her crew fired a single farewell cannon shot, and soon they disappeared on the horizon.
When a ship fires a cannon shot like that on departure, they don't actually use a cannonball though, right? It's just they just put the black powder in the cannon. Because you think just firing a cannonball randomly into the distance could be quite dangerous. It's like shooting your guns in the air.
The vessel and her men were never seen again. Accounts of what might have happened to Le Griffon and her small crew vary widely. Some, including LaSalle, stated in their writings that the ship was probably lost in a storm that hit the area not long after the ship departed. The crew were said to have ignored warnings from the Potawatomi that the winds were about to change. It's easy to imagine that the ship would have been quickly overtaken while caught in a violent storm on treacherous waters that
I think that looks like a toy ship though.
the crew were completely unfamiliar with.
Yeah, that's definitely very small. I can tell by the size of the water
But other
molecules.
theories suggest
Yes, it's weird to say I can see the water molecules, but the way that water coheses together, you can kind of tell it was a model.
a more human cause. Some think that the ship and her small crew might have been overtaken by other, more hostile tribes. Fragments of a contradictory letter from LaSalle suggests that this might have been their fate, but the letter's accuracy is uncertain. Others believe the ship's crew might have scuttled the ship.
All right, thank you for the clarification, staff. So, 2 sails not only add sail area but create a slot effect, which enhances power. But square rigged sailplanes can go upwind really well.
Ships themselves on purpose and stolen the valuable furs. In the end, no one knows for sure. Le Griffon is widely considered to be the first ship lost on the Great Lakes. Over the years, a number of searchers have claimed to find her wreck, but as of the making of this video, none of these discoveries
Yeah, it should be a French flag. Le sel, le griffon, le griffon.
have been proven to be Le Griffon. Her ultimate fate seems forever lost to time. It would be more than 80 years after Le Griffon before another sailing ship would enter the Great Lakes and commercial shipping would be established, forever changing the area and facilitating European settlement. While the Potawatomi saw a brief period of good relations with the French, they would eventually also fall victim to westward expansion.
Yeah, never trust European colonists. That's just good advice. That's just sound advice for you. Never trust European colonists.
After the Indian Removal Act of 1830 was passed, a band of 859 Potawatomi were rounded up on September 4th, 1838. Their leaders were shackled and retained in the back of a wagon, and the party was forced to march 660 miles to a small reserve in present-day Kansas. At least 40 people died during the grueling journey that the Potawatomi came to call the Trail of Death. LaSalle continued exploring the region. In 1684, he was tasked with establishing a French colony on the Gulf of
We just a time jump and then fell backwards.
Mexico. The ill-fated expedition was plagued with misfortune. On March 19, 1687, LaSalle was killed by what was described as a disgruntled follower. It's believed that only 15 of the 180 colonists survived past 1688. The loss of Le Griffon is an eerie precursor, not only to the shipwrecks that would plague the region in the years to come, but also the suffering that would soon be wrought by European settlement.
For real, for real.
While the ultimate fate of Le Griffon may never be known, her historic impact is abundantly clear.
Here we go. Here's the final story. What happened to Captain George Donner?
With so many Great Lakes shipwrecks, even when a vessel vanishes with her entire crew, the disappearance usually coincides with a massive storm, making these mysteries less a question of what happened and more a question of when and how. But some Great Lakes mysteries defy such mundane explanations.
I hope this one's really supernatural. Not that the other ones haven't been interesting, there just hasn't been like that supernatural element that I like to sink my teeth into.
Shipping on the Great Lakes was historically seasonal due to the ice that would cover much of the water surface during the winter. The winter of 1937 was particularly harsh, and the upper lakes remained choked with ice well into the spring. Nevertheless, the season commenced. In the last week of April, the 58-year-old Captain George R. Donner carefully navigated his freighter, the O.S. McFarland, through the treacherous ice floes. They carried 9,800 tons of coal from Erie, Pennsylvania to Port Washington, Wisconsin.
This sounds very similar to the Edmund Fitzgerald, though, so far, with its heavy load.
The challenging conditions kept Captain Donner on his bridge throughout the voyage. By the time they cleared the Straits of Mackinac and sailed into northern Lake Michigan on April 28th.
Absolutely. I want to emphasize that, Steph. The absolute deadliest stretch of water on the planet are the Carolina Outer Banks. It's not even close. Yes, they have the shifting sand dunes and stuff there too that'll eat your ship, basically. You know, a dune might rise up where one's never been in the last 500 years and just destroy your hull. There's a ship graveyard out there on the Outer Banks. Isn't that why some of the racers use an ovalized sail? Welcome back, Scott.
He was absolutely exhausted. Luckily, as they sailed south, the ice cleared.
They didn't sail, though. This is a steamship as they chugged south.
And the captain decided to take a much-needed break. Command was handed over to the chief mate, and he was instructed to wake the captain when they neared their destination. Captain Donner retired to his cabin and gently closed the door behind him. It was his birthday, but the dedicated captain didn't plan to celebrate until they safely arrived in port and unloaded their cargo. The weather was calm, and the water was ice-free as they neared the end of their voyage without incident. After 3 hours, Port Washington lay just ahead. The second mate was sent to wake the captain, as he was instructed. He politely knocked on the captain's cabin door, but there was no answer. After a moment, he tried again.
Chugged south does sound like a euphemism. You're not wrong.
Knocking louder, but still he was met with silence. Growing concerned, he tried the door, but it was locked from the inside. After calling the captain's name, the mate grew concerned that Captain Donner might have fallen ill. He summoned some other crew members, and together they forced the door open. They found that the captain's cabin was empty. Nothing was out of order. His bunk was neatly made, showing no signs that anyone had recently slept there. His comb and razor sat out on his desk, ready for the next morning. Besides the locked door that the crew just broke in, the only other exit from the room was a small porthole, far too small for any adult to fit through. Nothing about Captain Donner's behavior seemed out of the ordinary. When he was last seen,
you'd be surprised what a person can fit through when they put their mind to it. But this really does sound like maybe there was a suicide here? I don't know.
He looked tired, but he seemed to be in good spirits. Every inch of the ship was searched, but no signs of the captain or any foul play were ever found. The lake was exceptionally calm, and the crew scanned the water, but nothing suggesting that someone had gone overboard was found. When they arrived in port, the incident was reported.
Because that water is so cold that you just suck right down. You sit on the bottom, and you stay down there because you don't get to come back up once you go down in the bottom of the lake, the bottom of the lakes, any of the lakes.
And a request went out to all ships in the area to search for the missing captain. But no body or any trace of Captain Donner was ever found, and the cause of his disappearance remains a mystery.
These Donner people seem to have bad luck. I'm glad my last name is not Donner. I don't know anybody with the last name Donner either, and then like look in the history books and there's so many people named Donner. I feel like they went extinct because of their bad luck.
To this day.
Except for the one that pulls Santa's sleigh. That Donner is, I guess that's Donder, but still. Triangles. What? Yo.
These are just 3 of the many strange mysteries that haunt Lake Michigan. On June 23rd, 1950, Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 2501 vanished over the lake with 55 passengers and 3 crew. On July 3rd, 1998, a high-performance single-jet engine plane vanished with its pilot.
It's Donder in the original play. I think the original verse. I think they changed it to Donner later on to more Americanize it. A lot of the reindeer have Germanic names, and Donder's Germanic.
Pilot and a single passenger. And of course, over the years, numerous ships have met untimely ends in the area. But the same can be said about Lake Superior, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, and Lake Ontario. If you connect the right dots, you can make triangles everywhere. While the Lake Michigan Triangle offers a tantalizing story, it doesn't seem any different from the other lakes.
Yeah.
The only thing we know for sure is that the Great Lakes are unique bodies of water with unpredictable weather and geography that makes their icy waters all the more deadly. We may never know what happened to these sailors, but speculation persists, and stories beg for a satisfying ending.
God. Oh, there's a speedboat.
Thank you so much for watching. What do you think happened to the Rosabelle, Captain Donner, and Le Griffon? I'd love to hear what your theories are down in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more stories like this one. Thank you again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Use the link below to get 10% off your first month. I'm also thrilled to share that I just launched channel memberships with fun Weird Ass Funnel channel badges and early access to videos.
Weird Ass! I love that! Weird Ass!
You can explore what memberships have to offer using the link below. I'd like to also give a special shout out to my wonderful supporters on Patreon.
Yeah.
They would
Great Patreon. You have a ton of I have Patreon subscribers too, or Patreon members. You can be a Patreon member. The links are being dropped by BugBot. Yeah. So don't forget about that. Now, let's see. So that was the big old boats. You know, if you want to subscribe, I subscribe. You can subscribe too. I dropped the link in the chat earlier, so you just scroll up and click on that. But what do you guys think about the Michigan Triangle? Is it weird? Is it any different than any other body of water with its triangles that cause shipwrecks and plane disappearances and things like that? Like the Bermuda Triangle, where it really just comes down to correlation of volume. The number of ships that move through that area annually is higher. Therefore, there's going to be more shipwrecks and more disappearances and more tragedy just in general. That's the Bermuda Triangle. That's the Michigan Triangle. There's other triangles too, don't get me wrong, but we may have to dive into some more triangles. I only subscribe to @HiveSci and HiveSci only. Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you so much for your support there, Germania. Appreciate you. And good morning. All right, so yeah, when it comes to the Michigan Triangle, let me know down below what you think that this phenomena is. What's causing ships to disappear and such. And please remember to be kind, take care, and we'll see you next time. All right, don't go anywhere, as I always say. Don't go anywhere, because we got more show to come. We still have Bree's Bestiary, which is going to match with the thumbnail. So you don't want to miss that. You don't want to miss the opportunity to learn about the Gila monster. But before we even get to the Gila monster, we're going to take another intermission. And I'm going to promote one of my dear friends. All right, so thank you. I will be right back with ya.
I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. It's in the night
He makes a whiskey drink, he makes a vodka drink, he makes a lager drink, he makes a cider drink. He sings songs that remind him of the good times, sings songs that remind him of the better times.
Oh, Donny boy, Donny boy, Donny boy. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down.
Hello, my beauties and bees, and welcome to Bree's Bestiary, a show that I do every week, which is part of Live from the Hive, where we look at different creatures from the animal kingdom, explore their folklore, their mythology, their biology, and their ecology to give everybody a better understanding of the animal as a whole. And I have done a few creatures since I've moved down here to the Southwest, a few creatures from the Southwest. I did, of course, the Texas grizzly. I've done the roadrunner. We've talked about prairie dogs, all the little critters that run around this area. But there is a monster in this area, and it is often misunderstood, often mischaracterized, and often demonized despite its pretty docile and general disposition. I'm talking about the Gila monster. The Gila monster is is part of a group of lizards. There's the Gila monster and the Mexican beaded lizard, and they get really big. They're the biggest lizards in North America, and they have some unique characteristics that cause them to have a bad reputation. We're going to see what the Wild Files has to say about the Gila monster's bite.
How's it going, guys? My name's Donnie Kelly Kearns, and today we have one of the single coolest lizards on the planet to talk about, the Gila monster.
Love you.
So first things first, let's just look at the color of that lizard. I mean, have you ever seen an animal like that? He still needs to shed, so he's not even as vibrant as they can get, but this light color can range from yellow to pink to bright orange, and of course he's gonna have that nice black webbing. And what that—
I honestly, nothing would make me happier than as things warm up and Greg Abbott, and I get out into the desert than to run across one of these beauties in the wild. That would just, my heart would flutter through my throat.
That color pattern means is to stay away, don't try to eat me because I'm venomous and I'm gonna give you a nasty, nasty bite. That's called aposematic coloration. So when an animal is way too bright to actually camouflage with anything, it's just way too colorful, that's probably what it means. It's trying to tell that predator, do not eat me, you're in for a world of hurt. And that's exactly the case with the Gila monster. This guy's bite is excruciatingly painful.
I love their fat little tails. They're a lot like a gecko in their proportions, and they're pretty, like, generally, like, as a something you handle, they're pretty much like a gecko too, pretty fairly lethargic, which creates a problem because people who own them as pets get complacent with them and thinking of them like geckos, and that's how you end up getting bit. So people get bit by these lizards fairly regularly just due to complacency and not being cautious enough when handling them. I think it was that Brian Barclay who was talking about how he knows people who have Gila monsters and venomous snakes, and they never get bit by the venomous snakes but always get bit by the Gila monsters because holding a Gila monster is like holding a gecko, and you get like kind of chill with it.
And that's because of its venom. It has venom about as potent as a rattlesnake's, but it doesn't have nearly as much quantity, so it's not gonna kill you. But what it's gonna do is hurt you incredibly bad, and you'll wish that you're dead. And this animal's venom is unique because it's not designed to actually kill the prey it eats, as would a snake's or a spider's venom. This animal's venom is solely for protecting itself. And how we know that is because the creatures this animal hunts are very slow moving, they don't put up much of a struggle, they don't need to be envenomated.
Mostly Gila monsters like eggs. They can live almost completely on eggs. They'll eat other creatures too. They'll eat fledglings and baby mammals and the adult mammals if they can catch them, and adult reptiles and birds if they can catch them too. But eggs is what they're all about. Eggs, and that's also part of the correlation between their venom, because when you're snacking on somebody's babies, somebody's unhatched offspring, they may have some they may take umbrage with those actions, and in which case they may need to the monster may need to defend itself.
So the only reason this animal has venom and this gorgeous patterning is to let other animals know, don't mess with me, because it's going to give them a really nasty bite. So these guys are the only venomous lizard in the United States, and on top of that, they're also the biggest lizard in the United States.
Now, throughout my childhood, throughout my growing up, it was often presented as the Gila monster and the Mexican beaded lizard were the only venomous lizards in the animal kingdom. Like, oh, they're the only venomous lizards. It was the thing it was one of their claims to fame. But now we know, since then, new understandings have come forward about monitor lizards. And every single varanid, that's That's the genus that contains all monitor lizards. Every single varanid is venomous. So, not just the Gila monster.
States. So these guys can get up to almost 2 feet long, which is a crazy large reptile, especially for the United States. Now let's look at this guy's tail. It's very unique among lizards. His tail is actually shorter than his body. If you look at most other lizards, their tail is going to be extremely long. This guy's a very short, compact tail. He's going to use that tail to store fat and whatnot. Super unique among lizards.
That's not unique among lizards, though, guide. Come on, that's the gecko way. Geckos, desert geckos have the fat tail like that, right? It's not unique among lizards.
Some other notes about this guy's appearance. You see those huge puffy jowls. What those are actually jaw muscles. The jaw pressure of this animal is insane. If it were to latch onto my finger, it's going to be extremely difficult to get him off. It's just like a vice-like grip. He's going to hold on. The only way to get a Gila monster off your finger is going to be to put it in water, hope that it lets go, or you're going to have to pry his mouth open with something like a knife. That's how strong these guys' jaw pressure is. And their venom glands, weirdly enough, are actually on their bottom jaw. All snakes and whatnot have their venom glands on the top jaw, but these guys have their venom glands on the bottom, and they don't have fangs. They actually have to chew the venom into you. It's not very efficient. It's a very primitive venom delivery system, but I mean, it still works for what they need it for. So what this guy eats is very unique among lizards. This guy is gonna pretty much solely target the eggs of ground nesting birds and also juvenile rodents. So this guy will go around sniffing out eggs from things like quail, doves, and he has a great sense of smell. That forked tongue is gonna help him out detect those scent molecules. He can actually detect an egg buried 6 inches underground. And his sense of smell is so good that if you take an egg and just roll it down a sidewalk, he'll follow the exact same path that egg took. That's how good his sense of smell is. He'll also eat things like juvenile cottontail rabbits. So when it's spring, all the little bunnies are out, he's gonna go into those.
So, okay, Brian Stevens, just want to clarify on that. The reptiles that are over 2 feet in Florida are invasive. I don't think there's any indigenous reptile or any indigenous, I keep saying reptile, any indigenous lizard in Florida that is bigger than a Gila monster, but there are invasive like green iguanas and stuff, yeah.
Burrows, eat them up, and again, he doesn't need the venom to kill this slow-moving prey. He's only going to use that venom for defense. And that brings us to a point of how people are so afraid of these guys. These guys have so much superstition around them. People think that if they bite you, you're just automatically dead. You won't die. You're gonna wish you were dead. It's gonna be extremely painful, but these guys aren't out to get you. This lizard only has its venom to defend itself, and if you leave these guys alone, they're gonna leave you alone. So the Gila monster is actually named by Edward Drinker Cope. He's the same guy that I talked about in the Rosie Boa video. He named that animal, but he's most famous for naming a bunch.
Scott Duke, the efficiency is better than the efficiency of a varanid. So I mean, it's effective enough to work. You want to call it? They want to call it primitive. I don't know. Brown water snakes and eastern diamondback rattlesnakes aren't undiferous. You know, if that is a good point. If we consider that snakes are lizards too, then yeah, there's definitely snakes that are longer than a Gila monster.
Bunch of really famous dinosaur species, and that's sort of fitting for this guy because this guy is almost like a living fossil. The family that Gila monsters are in are super ancient. They go all the way back to the Cretaceous period. Now we don't have many species, but these guys have been going around eating the eggs of possibly dinosaurs for many years now. Now the texture of this lizard is really unlike anything I've ever felt. It's extremely hard. The name Heloderma, its scientific name, means studded scales, sort of like the studs of a nail head. And that's a very fitting name because this animal's armor is extremely thick. It almost feels like a living rock. So any animal that's gonna try and bite this guy is gonna have to get through that armor, and that's gonna be a very hard time. So this lizard is from the southwestern United States, especially Arizona, and they do leak into New Mexico. So hopefully someday I can see one of these guys in my home state.
I see what you mean, yeah.
Very rare there.
I guess he didn't clarify, but yeah, non-serpentes. Lizards, the largest non-serpentes lizard in North America. There you go.
They're rare everywhere they are. These guys have huge home ranges, and to actually see one is quite a special treat. So if you do see one in the wild, definitely embrace it. Now, as you can see, this Gila monster is sort of booking it. I mean, he's not the fastest lizard in the world, but what's really unique about him is their stamina. They can keep up this speed for such a long time. They'll keep moving, unlike other lizards. If you see a little fence lizard or something, it's gonna dart, take a pause, get its breath, and then keep going. These lizards don't need to stop. They can just keep on trucking. They're very efficient with the oxygen use.
I kind of want one, but I don't need one. I kind of want a tegu too, but I don't need one.
In their blood, so their stamina is unmatched in the lizard world. So the Gila monster, a very unique animal, a venomous lizard. You really don't see that too often, and I'm very happy to have been able to share this time with this animal and show him to you guys. Really a bunch of cool things we can learn from this animal. But
yep, snakes are indeed lizards. Yep, snakes are just a clade of lizards. Lepidosaurs. There are like varanids, like we keep talking about varanids, and Gila monsters too are closer related to snakes than they are to most other species of lizards. So yeah. Did he say reptile? I thought he said lizard. Yeah, when it comes to reptiles, there's definitely, I mean, especially if you include archosaurs, there's gators and birds that are bigger than a Gila monster. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I thought he said lizards. I may be mistaken.
the number one point I want you guys to take away from this is that these animals aren't out to get you. If you see one, don't kill it. First off, you'll get fined like crazy. And second of all, they aren't out to get you. These guys' venom is only for defense, so if you let them be, don't mess with them. You can take in this animal, appreciate the gorgeous patterning.
Get some pictures, get some videos, send them to Bree. Yes. Yes, and native crocs too. Yeah, American crocodiles, which are semi-marine, so they can actually travel up and down the coast too.
The size of it, it's the biggest lizard in the United States. There's just no other creature like it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, learned a lot. If you want to keep posted on my new and upcoming animal adventures, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you all so much for watching.
All right, and we had one more video on this, the terrifying Gila monster bite. I keep wanting to say Gila.
Nocturnal animals, that come out at night. These animals don't use the venom in catch and prey. They only use the venom in defense. They have to chew to start to release the venom. Now, they've got a really great grip. When something like this happens, you have to ask yourself, how much venom? Was the person immunocompromised? How big is the person? How big is the victim compared to the amount of venom that's injected? How toxic is this venom?
Earlier this year, a tragic incident occurred in Colorado involving a man and his illegal pet Gila monster, marking the first fatality from a Gila monster bite in nearly a century.
I've only seen one in a private home in Colorado in 41 years of practice, and that was one that was seized at a crack house by the Denver Police Department.
The victim, 34-year-old Christopher Ward from Lakewood, was bitten by his pet Gila monster named Winston.
Nobody really explains what happened. I'm sure it was just an accident, He's probably just cleaning the cage or, maintaining the animal and probably got bit by mistake, and unfortunately, it's the way he responded to it.
Despite the immediate and severe...
I think there's manatees in that pond too, isn't there, Brian? Like, manatees love those warm nuclear cooling ponds.
...effects, Ward delayed seeking medical attention for 2 hours after the bite. Upon finally reaching the hospital, he was already fading in and out of consciousness, and over the next 4 days...
I love their goofy little derpy tongues. They're so cute. Oh my gosh, they're so cute.
He suffered several seizures and ultimately passed away.
About this bite, why it's become so newsworthy is that, and for this to have developed into a crisis so rapidly, suggests that probably that person was very sensitive to foreign proteins.
When something like this happens, you have to ask yourself, how much venom? Was the person immunocompromised? How big is the person? How big is the victim compared to the amount of venom that's injected? How toxic is this venom?
But he also may have had a lot of venom delivered.
The Colorado Department of Natural Resources subsequently transferred Winston and another Gila monster named Potato to a wildlife center in South Dakota. Gila monsters, scientifically known as Heloderma suspectum, are native to the southwestern United States,
Look how they wiggle their little butts when they walk. It's so cute.
particularly Arizona and northwestern Mexico, rarely found in other states like New Mexico. These lizards thrive in desert and semi-arid regions, spending most of their time underground. They are the largest lizards in the United States, growing up to 2 feet or 60 centimeters in length and weighing around 3.5 pounds or 1.6 kilograms. Named by Edward Drinker Cope, a prominent figure.
We all know Edward Drinker Cope from the Bone Wars, guys. We remember Edward Drinker Cope, right?
In paleontology, Gila monsters belong to the ancient family Helodermatidae, which dates back to the Cretaceous period. This family's lineage suggests that Gila monsters have been around since the time of dinosaurs, potentially preying on dinosaur eggs. These lizards are easily recognized.
There was a giant Gila monster too in the
by their distinctive beaded appearance,
period was that
resulting from osteoderms, which are bony deposits in their skin. Their colors range from yellow to pink, bright orange, and black, serving as a posaumatic coloration to warn predators of their venomous nature. The name Heloderma translates to studded skin, reflecting their tough, armor-like scales that feel almost like living rock, providing substantial protection from predators. Gila monsters are one of only 2 known venomous lizard species, the other being the Mexican beaded lizard, Heloderma horridum. Unlike snakes, which inject venom through hollow fangs, Gila monsters have venom glands in their lower
they use
jaw.
the same image
They
as the
deliver
last
venom
guy.
by biting, latching on, and chewing, allowing
Yeah,
venom
using
to
the same imagery as the previous video.
flow through grooves in their teeth into the wound.
When they bite, they have very strong jaw-closing muscles, so they can hold on like a little bulldog.
Their venom, while as potent as rattlesnake venom, is produced in much smaller quantities and is primarily used for self-defense rather than hunting.
These animals don't use the venom in catching prey. They only use the venom in defense. They have to chew to start to release the venom. Now, they've got a really great grip.
The venom causes severe pain, nausea, vomiting, sweating, and a significant drop in blood pressure, but is rarely fatal if treated promptly.
Very, very potent effect on blood pressure, and it causes blood pressure to crash really, really quickly.
The venom is not intended to kill prey, as the slow-moving creatures Gila monsters hunt do not require envenomation. Gila monsters are generally reclusive and prefer to avoid human interaction. They are primarily diurnal, but may become...
I was trying to look up and see if I could find some details about the extinct giant Gila monster, but I'm not finding anything, unfortunately.
Nocturnal during hot weather.
These are shy, nocturnal animals. You know, that come out at night.
Their diet consists mainly of eggs from ground-nesting birds and juvenile rodents, which they
I
locate
could also be
using their
considered
excellent
a
sense of
shy
smell.
nocturnal animal. Just letting you
Their
know.
forked tongue helps detect scent molecules, allowing them to find eggs buried up to 6 inches underground. Interestingly, Gila monsters can follow the scent trail of an egg rolled along the ground, demonstrating their keen olfactory abilities.
Alright, did you just like watch the previous video and then put an AI voice reading it?
They hunt with powerful jaws that grip prey firmly, and their bites are difficult to escape due to their strong, vice-like grip. The breeding season for Gila monsters occurs in the spring, with females laying 2 to 12 eggs in burrows. The eggs hatch after about 4 months, and the young are independent from birth. Despite their fearsome reputation, Gila monsters
Oh,
are
and actually shows a clip from his video.
not aggressive and will only bite if provoked or mishandled.
It's hard for me to, get too loose on here because even though he's being very calm, I don't really want to give him any latitude.
This isn't something you would get out and play with, or this isn't something that, you would put on your lap, or these are venomous reptiles. Can we trust them?
No, they're really neat animals, but to be respected for sure, you know.
Yeah, don't handling anything that's venomous is should be limited. Even like my little spiders and stuff. You don't want to make them waste their venom on you. And you don't want to deal with their venom in you.
You can get venom from them by getting them very agitated, and so I just as soon you not be agitated.
Their venom, although painful, is usually not fatal unless the victim has underlying health conditions, such as compromised liver function, which impairs the body's ability to process toxins. Gila monsters are currently listed as near threatened on the IUCN Red List, primarily due to habitat loss and illegal collection.
There's a huge black market trade in reptiles, endangered species, animals that people shouldn't have, animals that shouldn't be collected.
They are protected by law in many areas within their range, making it illegal to capture or harm them in states like Arizona. Despite the danger posed by their bites, many experts consider Gila monsters to be among the most fascinating reptiles.
True.
Their venom has been studied for medical applications, leading to developments such as the diabetes medication exenatide, derived from a compound in their venom.
And yes, that's Ozempic. That's Mounjaro. That's all these GLP-1s. This is the compound that they use to create those, and that's why I wanted to cover this today, and that's why I wanted to make sure I got this video too, because the previous video didn't talk about this. But they have a lot of medical significance in treating diabetes of all things.
Gila monsters are well adapted to survive in harsh desert environments, using their fat-storing tails and efficient metabolism to endure long periods without food or water. With the ability to maintain a steady pace over long distances, these remarkable creatures demonstrate impressive stamina compared to other lizards. Their unique evolutionary traits and ancient lineage underscore their ecological importance and evolutionary success.
All right, so that was, the Gila monster. Basically, I think the Gila monster, just in the short time that we've been using its venom to create GLP-1s, has probably saved more human lives than it could, than they have killed since humans first crossed the Bering Strait into North America, right? They've really, when it comes to the diabetes epidemic that's, especially in North America and in the U.S., even more specifically, people that die from complications due to diabetes every day, those numbers are through the roof. And having a little lizard be able to save so many lives is freaking fascinating. But, do you like a Gila monster? Do you have a preferred favorite lizard or venomous animal that you'd like to see us covered? Let me know in the comments below if I find it tantalizing enough. I'll get on board for it for sure. But yeah, this has been Bree's Bestiary, exploring the world of the Gila monster. Please remember to be kind, take care, and we will see you next time. All right, live from the Hive, folks. Thank you so much for sticking around. Just to reiterate, the next week for the Weird With It, we already have our selection, which is going to be the jewels, the cursed jewels. There will be a poll up. Usually I put it up on Monday. I might start putting it up on Sunday. I don't know yet. But for what's going to be on Cryptic Corner next week, you can, of course, comment and add anything you want to this video. Let me know what you'd like to see on Bree's Bestiary. But generally, Bree's Bestiary, I leave to my decision. It's the one segment of the show that I like to be able to pick myself. But you can make suggestions on what you want to cover. But I just have been on a kick with desert Southwest creatures. I just have, yeah. Speaking of desert Southwest creatures, when I was listing them off, I forgot to mention the camel corpse. The feral camels that lived in the desert for at least a few decades before they died out. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up here. You gotta get ready. We're going to arcade themed pub tonight, and we're gonna have some fun. It's gonna be a good time. So I'm gonna get ready for that. But you all remember to be kind and take care and all that good stuff. I love you so much. Appreciate you for sticking around. And yeah, all right. I'm gonna show you some elephant stuff that's gonna make you cry. Love ya.
With all the noise, pseudoscience, and political rhetoric clogging the airwaves about transgender people, it can be difficult to understand what's really happening and what's really true. Good news, everyone! Welcome to The Transpositions, your compass in the rugged landscape of transgender issues. Here, we strive to be the beacon of authenticity, providing a platform that amplifies the voices and experiences of the transgender community. From breaking news to in-depth features to breaking down the real science, we are committed to fostering understanding, empathy, and empowerment for all individuals across the gender spectrum. Join us as we navigate the complexities, celebrate the triumphs, and advocate for the rights of transgender people worldwide. Together, we can redefine boundaries, challenge stereotypes, and champion inclusivity. Subscribe today. The link is in the description.